Chapter 119. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, over here. Chu Yang led Tai Butian and the others to the prison. When they reached the door, Chu Yang, Tai Butian and the two shadows walked in. The others stayed outside. The prison was not dark and damp. It was dry and clean. In the corner, there was an iron pillar as thick as a person's waist. Tang Xiansheng's whole body was shackled and tied to it. When he saw Chu Yang come in, he even showed a peaceful smile. It was as if being tied to this pillar was as comfortable as lying on a bed at home. The people of Heaven Mending Pavilion had already restored his original appearance. He now had the appearance of a 30-something-year-old handsome scholar. Tai Butian slowly walked in with his hands behind his back. He looked at Tang Xiansheng for a long time without blinking. Tang Xiansheng smiled warmly, just like when he was talking to Tai Butian in court. Official Tang, what is your relationship with Di Wuqing Ro? Tai Butian walked to the table in the center and slowly sat down. He did not ask if you are a spy, but directly asked about your relationship with Di Wuqing Ro. This could give people the misconception that we already have a complete grasp of your situation, so there's no need to deny it. Your Highness is taking things for granted by asking this question. Tang Xiansheng chuckled. Tang Xiansheng may be a prisoner, but I am not someone who will be forced to confess. So you are really a spy from Great Zhao? Tai Butian closed his eyes. I don't want to admit it. When you first tried to trick me, I also wanted to deny it. Haha, I can only say that my temperament is not good enough. Tang Xiansheng smiled freely. Since it has come to this, how can I still deny it? Tai Butian sighed and said, Official Tang, you are very capable and have many tricks up your sleeve. I have always respected you and thought highly of you. I even thought that if one day the world was at peace, I would appoint you as the Prime Minister of Iron Cloud. Haha, I had high hopes for you, but I never thought that I would be deceived by you for 10 years. Tai Butian's words were very sincere. Even Tang Xiansheng, who was tied to the iron pillar, was silent for a while. He remembered the harmonious relationship between the monarch and his minister. He sighed and said, His Highness has indeed treated me well. However, the two countries are at war, and each has his own master. This Tang also sighs endlessly. He paused for a moment, then smiled and said, This Tang's biggest advantage was that when I entered Iron Cloud, Your Highness was still young and could not see through this Tang's disguise. By the time Your Highness grew up, everything was already set in stone. Thus I was able to stay in Iron Cloud for 10 years. If it was the current Butian Tai, I'm afraid he would have been caught on the first day. After saying that, he laughed self-deprecatingly and said, Your Highness is wise and far-sighted, and you have the world in your heart. You are a mighty lord of your generation. Unfortunately, he was born at the wrong time. Against Di Wuqing Ro, any genius can only end up turning into ashes. Di Wuqing Ro? Tai Butian took a deep breath and spoke in a sentimental tone. However, there was a sharp glint in her eyes. Di Wuqing Ro is indeed an ambitious and ruthless person. And it's precisely because of this that I need to know everything that you know, Lord Tang. I will not say. Your Highness should also know that such an answer would lead to such a result. Tang Xiansheng smiled warmly and said, Your Highness, please take into account that I have not caused any great losses to Iron Cloud. The current me has not made any mistakes. I ask Your Highness to preserve some dignity for me. Dignity? Tai Butian's expression changed. Seemed that he was conflicted. But in the end he sighed softly. He stood up and walked out with his hands clasped behind his back. He walked to the entrance of the hall and said casually, Let him speak. After he finished speaking, he waved at Chu Yang and walked out without looking back. This Butian Tai finally showed his iron-blooded side. Chu Yang also followed him out and stood side by side with Tai Butian in front of the eaves. He could feel that right now Tai Butian's heart was not feeling good. Suddenly, a strange sound came from the cell. Then, Tang Xiansheng's tragic roar could be heard. Kill me. Then came a series of screams. Tang Xiansheng gritted his teeth and shouted, Tai Butian, you use such despicable means to torture a strong person. Don't you feel ashamed? I just want a dignified death. You won't even give it to me? Tai Butian stood quietly. His jade-like face did not have the slightest expression. Senior Chu, I feel very sorry for this person. Tai Butian clasped his hands behind his back and said quietly, I used to admire his ability. Chu Yang rolled his eyes behind his mask and said, that is natural. An enemy that can make us feel sorry is the most terrifying enemy. If the enemy can make us look down on him, then we do not need to go to such lengths. That's right. Tai Butian nodded slightly and said, torturing a strong person, a wise person, is really not my intention. However, I must know what he knows. If not, I would rather give him a quick death. I am also very willing to give him a quick death. Chu Yang was silent for a while and said, in this world, some things cannot be forced. And some people, even if you break all their bones, they will not say a word. Tang Xiansheng is such a person. When I first caught him, I did not have the slightest hope of prying open his mouth. I am afraid you will be disappointed. Tai Butian was silent. After a while he said, not necessarily. Those two guards of mine are practically from hell, so I'm very confident in their methods. It is just that, for Tang Xiansheng it is a bit cruel. Chu Yang smiled and said, Hua, you can wait and see. Tai Butian smiled gently and said, Minister Chu, do you want to make a bet with me? Chu Yang smiled. Could it be that your highness is a gambler? What kind of bet? Let's bet on whether Tang Xiansheng will speak or not. Tai Butian said, I bet that if I win, will Minister Chu stay in Iron Cloud? No matter when. I hope to create a prosperous Iron Cloud with you. As he said this, Tai Butian turned his head and looked at Chu Yang, his eyes full of sincerity. Tai Butian had always been brooding over the conversation he had with Chu Yang. It was a loss for such a talent to not stay in Iron Cloud forever. Chu Yang's performance during this period of time proved this point even more. Now, Tai Butian was clearly making another effort. You will be disappointed again. Chu Yang faintly smiled. Then he shifted his gaze away and said, well, I'll bet. But, if I win, I want to go to the Imperial Palace's medicine storehouse and treasure storehouse to pick some things. Chu Yang had always remembered Mo Qing Wu's injury and half a heavy pill. Chu Yang's condition seemed to be incomparable to Tai Butian's condition. But both of them knew that this was what they cared about the most at the moment. Yes. Good. It's a deal. Tai Butian was overjoyed. He raised his palm, obviously wanting to make an oath. Chu Yang looked at Tai Butian's palm and his heart skipped a beat. Tai Butian's palm was white, slender and slender. Moreover, it was almost 2 sizes smaller than his own palm. Was this still a man's palm? Tai Butian saw Chu Yang staring at his hand and his expression changed. He unconsciously said with some annoyance, are you going to bet or not? Why are you in a daze? Chu Yang immediately came back to his senses. He smiled awkwardly and raised his hand to meet Tai Butian's. Bang! The two soldiers' palms collided with each other. When their palms touched, Chu Yang only felt that Tai Butian's palm was extremely soft and smooth. He couldn't help but smile and say, Your Highness really takes good care of yourself. Tai Butian was startled. He retracted his hand at lightning speed and snorted. He said in a slightly rough voice, I won't regret it even if I die. Minister Chu, don't go back on your word. Chu Yang laughed out loud. He then said with certainty, I won't lose. The two of them looked at each other. Tai Butian looked at the sinister mask on Chu Yang's face and smiled. Minister Chu, is it effective to be so mysterious? Chu Yang chuckled and didn't answer. He asked instead, what do you think? All arrangements will not be made without aim. Tai Butian laughed. After a long time, the moans in the cell became weaker and weaker. However, they were connected and trembling. After a while, a shadow floated out. His face was dark and his eyes were filled with fury. How is it? Tai Butian didn't turn around and asked confidently. I can't pry open his mouth. The shadow was somewhat ashamed. Huh. Tai Butian turned around in shock. You're not saying anything? The shadow nodded. There was anger in his eyes and a hint of admiration. He said, I have never seen such a tough bone in my life. Tai Butian fell silent and said, Let's go in and take a look. They walked to the door of the cell and looked inside. Even Chu Yang, who had a heart of stone, couldn't help but feel a little nauseous. These two shadows were really from hell. Tang Xiansheng inside was no longer in human form. Tang Xianshang's body did not have any open wounds, but his veins were bulging out of his skin like little snakes slithering all over his body. Two of his veins were squeezed together as if they had a life of their own, squirming and slowly tightening until they were able to break his bones. The sound of cracking could be heard. Tang Xianshang's eyes were bulging like bells. He couldn't shout or moan. However, his eyes occasionally returned to normal and were full of mockery. In Yang Thunderbolt Bone splitting hand, Chu Yang's heart was heavily shaken. This was the cruelest punishment in the world. The person who was subjected to it would feel 100 times worse than death. There was no one in the world who could endure this kind of punishment. And this Tang Xianshang had actually endured it. At this moment, Chu Yang felt heartfelt admiration for this spy's tough bone. Although he was an enemy, this kind of hero was rare in the world. Tai Butian's face flushed red. A layer of fine goosebumps could be clearly seen. He gritted his teeth and asked, "Is there any other way?" The two shadows were silent, but they shook their heads at the same time. Chapter 120. There was another way. One of them, Ying Wu said in a low voice, "But it's not human, it's an insult. But it might not be able to. If inhumane does not work, then why should we insult such a good man?" Chu Yang coldly snorted and interrupted. "Don't say any more." Tai Butian frowned and said decisively. He and Chu Yang spoke almost at the same time. The two shadows stepped back expressionlessly. Tai Butian looked at Feng Shui's miserable state and retched. He waved his hand and said, "Minister Chu is right. Let's give him a quick death. We have many ways to deal with Diwu Qingro. We have no choice but to torture him. Why should we insult such a good man? Kill him? What a pity." Chu Yang did not agree. Even if he was raised as bait, he would still be a treasure. "Kill him." Tai Butian sighed. "How can we bear to humiliate such a good man? There are some things that he can do even if he is dead. The key is how we do it. There is no need to torture a hero. Since His Highness has decided, then let's give him a quick death." Chu Yang nodded and took out his dagger. He slowly walked in front of Tang Xianshang. His heart was also inclined to give Tang Xianshang a quick death. But for the sake of the big plan, he had to keep him alive. Since Tai Butian had said so, Chu Yang did not insist. Looking at Tang Xianshang, Chu Yang said softly, "Why don't you kill yourself?" Tang Xianshang could not speak, but his eyes revealed a proud expression. He did not need to say anything. Chu Yang already understood. Such pride, such a proud person, such a proud bone, would rather be tortured to death by the enemy than commit suicide. His life would not end in his own hands. Chu Yang nodded and used his wrist to stab Tang Xianshang's heart. He said softly, "Rest in peace. In the next life we will be enemies again." A trace of gratitude flashed in Tang Xianshang's eyes. Then he revealed a calm smile. At the moment of his death, he miraculously opened his mouth. "Fifth, has an opponent. Unfortunately, I can't see it." His head tilted to the side and he passed away. His lifeless body stopped spasming and slowly laid flat on the ground. His originally distorted face miraculously regained its composure, and he even vaguely retained his original elegance and warmth. Chu Yang sighed. A hero should not be humiliated. But this time he did not know if killing Tang Xianshang was right or wrong. His value alive was much greater than dead. "Good man, official Tang. I should not have used you as a bet." Tai Butian looked at Tang Xianshang's body and solemnly said, "If you have a next life, I hope to be able to be your servant." Chu Yang's heart shook. He suddenly raised his head. He could tell that Tai Butian's words were truly from the bottom of her heart. Everyone would respect such a good man, but it was unusual for Tai Butian to say so. Just this sentence alone showed that Tai Butian was one level lower than Diwu Qingru. After all, he was not an ambitious and ruthless person who would do anything to achieve his goals. First, he gave Tang Xianshang a quick death. Now he felt sorry for him. Killing people was cruel, but for Tang Xianshang it was a good thing. Thirsting for talent was a good thing. But thirsting for talent from the enemy was digging one's own grave. This kind of mentality was a good thing for people, but for a weak ruler in a war between two countries it was not necessarily a good thing. "Don't worry. Our enemies, even if they are heroes of the great Liao, should be killed. Tai Butian smiled as if he had seen through Chu Yang's thoughts. He explained, I will not be merciful, but I must show enough respect to my enemies. Chu Yang smiled and said, that's right. I thought His Highness was going to renege on his promise. He thought to himself, perhaps this is the charm of Tai Butian's personality. After all, he and Di Wuqingru are different people. Ah! Tai Butian naturally knew that Chu Yang was trying to calm her down. She smiled and said, Minister Chu, don't worry. I am a man of my word. As she spoke, she walked out and said, Bury Tang Xansheng. Don't let anyone know. There were only 2 people waiting outside. Chang'ong and Chun Yutong. The 2 of them complied and went to do the job. Tai Butian walked in silence for a while. Then she suddenly turned her head and asked Chu Yang, Tang Xansheng is dead. What about his family? Chu Yang was silent for a while and said, according to my guess, Tang Xansheng's family may not be his real family. A person like him would not do such a stupid thing. Now, if the people in the house are gone, then it is real. If they are still there, then it must be fake. Tai Butian nodded and said, that's right. Investigate. Not long after, the investigator replied, Tang Xansheng's son and wife are at home. Minister Chu, do you think? Tai Butian looked at Chu Yang with an inquiring gaze. Chu Yang sighed in his heart and said, they can't die yet. The news of Tang Xansheng's death must be kept a secret. Keep their mother alive. Whether it is true or not, we can make Di Wuqingru fall into a trap. Of course, if Di Wuqingru sends someone to pick them up, then they must be kept alive or killed. But if they don't come, then it will be proven to be fake. At that time, it will be up to them. Tai Butian walked out a few steps. Facing the cold wind, he took a deep breath. Obviously, the cruel scene in the prison made this pampered Tai Butian uncomfortable. It was already very good that he could endure it. After a while, she turned her head and looked at Chu Yang. Minister Chu, do you think that if we release the news that Tang Xansheng is in our hands, Di Wuqingru will send someone to save him? Chu Yang chuckled. The current Tai Butian had finally returned to normal. He was no longer the soft-hearted Tai Butian from before. And after he recovered, the first thing he thought of was to use this matter to attack his opponent. The news will be released. Whether Di Wuqingru will come to save him or not, I can't say for sure. But Tang Xansheng must have been the most important part of Di Wuqingru's plan. This is beyond doubt. Chu Yang revealed a mysterious smile. Then he sighed. Unfortunately, he is dead now. Tai Butian paced 2 steps in silence and said, there is news from the border. Di Wuqingru ordered the 5 legions in the north of Great Zhao to advance 100 miles. They are in a standoff with our army. Their swords are drawn. Because of this matter, Royal Uncle Long Cheng has already rushed to the front lines this afternoon. Tai Butian pondered and said, Di Wuqingru hasn't made any moves. But now, the 5 legions have suddenly been mobilized. Could it be related to Tang Xansheng? Chu Yang's heart shook. He suddenly remembered the note that Di Wuqingru wrote to Tang Xansheng. The scribbled words. Could Di Wuqingru be mobilizing his army for Tang Xansheng? Chu Yang's heart was moved. If this is the case, then my plan has a high chance of success. Tai Butian did not know that Chu Yang had intercepted Di Wuqingru's secret letter. But he still raised this question. Even though his tone was questioning, there was also some certainty. Then, Tai Butian clearly saw through this point. Looking at Chu Yang's confident appearance, Tai Butian's eyes flashed and he asked, Minister Chu seems to be in some trouble right now? Do you want me to send 2 people to protect you? The enemy is full of experts. We cannot afford to be careless. No need. Chu Yang refused. His eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. He wanted to agree. Tai Butian said to send 2 people. Chu Yang naturally knew who he wanted to send. Right now the air seemed to be heavy. If Tai Butian was willing to send people to help, then this crisis could be averted. At least it would not be so dangerous. But Chu Yang also clearly knew that Tai Butian's safety was more important than his own. If Di Wuqingru sent people and found Tai Butian's guards by his side, then Tai Butian would be in danger. Besides, there was another important reason, the heart of a strong warrior. If he accepted the protection this time from a psychological point of view, it would mean that he was being protected, and he would lose his fearless spirit. This would cause an inner demon to form when he was trying to reach the peak. No matter how strong the enemy was, he had to face it first. If he did not even face it, then his state of mind would really be destroyed. The heart of a strong warrior was to be fearless of everything. Chu Yang revealed a hint of a conceited smile. Life and death were not worth mentioning in front of such a mentality. The path of a strong warrior was filled with life and death difficulties at every step. Did he have to rely on Tai Butian every single time? Tai Butian looked at the divine light in Chu Yang's eyes that flashed with the desire to test the world. A hint of splendor also flashed across her eyes. She sighed softly and said no more. Not long after Tai Butian left, Wu Qianqian walked out of King of Hell Chu's room with a piece of paper in her hand. Those who saw it shuddered violently in their hearts. This time, who were they going to deal with? This is the name of several clans. Wu Qianqian handed the piece of paper to Chang'an and said, "The minister said that no matter what method was used, no matter how much manpower and resources were used, these people must be completely controlled. But don't make a move and don't alert them." Chang'an took the paper and looked at it. His face immediately turned bitter. There were more than a dozen names on the paper. There were also a few clans. Chang'an felt like the world was spinning. To do this with only 40 or so people from Fierce Blood Hall was too difficult. This time, Heavenly Secret Hall will cooperate with Fierce Blood Hall. Wu Qianqian's next sentence made Chun Yutong, who was laughing on the side, turn pale. Chang'an and Chun Yutong looked at each other and sighed. "Brothers, we are in the same boat." The names on the paper belonged to the people who provided Tang Xiansheng with proof. In other words, they belonged to Tang Xiansheng's faction. From the moment Tang Xiansheng entered Jingguan City, all of them had been captured in one fell swoop on this piece of paper. Also, tell Hall Leader Chun to quickly deliver the things Minister Chu wants. Wu Qianqian finished speaking and left. Chun Yutong was stunned for a moment. Then he jumped up as if his butt was on fire and rushed back to Heavenly Secret Hall. Immediately after, his flustered and exasperated voice rang out, "Hey! Last time, how much have you collected? Hurry up and bring it to me." A moment later, Chun Yutong walked into Chu Yang's room with a thick stack of documents and a fawning smile on his face. "Minister, haha? Minister, huh?" Chun Yutong nodded his head and bowed. This comical appearance made Wu Qianqian laugh out loud. She simply leaned on the table. "How much?" Chu Yang asked without lifting his eyelids. "A total of 37. Chun Yutong laughed dryly and wiped his cold sweat. Chapter 121. Much better. You see, Emo Qingwu blinked her eyes. Then she stretched out her hand and kicked her leg. She flaunted her martial prowess, and excitedly said, "Look, it's all better, right?" Yes, that's great." Then he coughed twice. Then, he said in a patient manner, "This Qingwu, my name is Emo Xiaowu." Emo Qingwu puffed her cheeks and rolled her eyes. "Uncle Chu Yang is so bad. You even remembered my name wrong." Xiaowu. Chu Yang was stunned. "Is Qingwu your elder sister?" Chu Yang was a little confused. "Did I get it wrong? I don't have an elder sister." Emo Qingwu rolled her eyes and said, "Qingwu is my full name. Mother said that I can only be called Qingwu after I'm 15. Now I'm Xiaowu. Do you understand? All the girls in the big clans are like this. Don't you know?" Little Luo put her hands on her hips and looked at Chu Yang with her head tilted. She looked at Chu Yang with disdain for making such a big deal out of nothing. Chu Yang was sweating. He was nervous and forgot about this matter. The daughters of the big clans were usually given names at birth, but they would only be officially given names when they reached the age of 30. It was only when they reached the age of 30 that these girls would be officially known by outsiders. Or they would walk the martial world. Or from then on, the clan would start to look for their future husband, of course. This was only the case for the outstanding daughters of the clan. Moreover, they would usually choose to marry into the family. Some girls with poor aptitude were basically betrothed at birth. They would become the tool of the clan's alliance through marriage, and would help the clan strengthen the clan. And Emo Qingwu's 3E meridian was destroyed. If she returned to the clan, after the Emo clan confirmed that she could not be cured, she would probably be reduced to a tool of marriage. Chu Yang looked at this little girl and felt a headache. But more than that, he felt heartache. The current Qingwu was innocent. How would she know the pain of being born in a big clan and being the daughter of the clan head? If she were to go back and face all those cruel things, would she break down? Thinking of the sadness on Mo Qingwu's face in his previous life, Chu Yang's heart ached. No matter what, he could not let Qingwu suffer that kind of pain again. Xiaowu, can you stay? Chu Yang held Mo Qingwu's small hand and asked softly, look, there are mountains and rivers here. And there are also people. There are many fun things to do here. When we are free, I will take you out to watch juggling, eat candied haws, and find many sisters to accompany you. Not good. Mo Qingwu pouted and said, I miss father and mother. I want to be with father, mother, and grandpa and grandma. Uncle Chu Yang, are you going to separate Xiaowu from her parents? Little Luo pouted angrily and said, Uncle Chu Yang, you're so bad. Must? Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. He had calculated and calculated, but he had neglected to take into account the little girl's dependence and admiration towards her parents. Right now, Mo Qingwu was at her happiest and most blissful moment in her parents' hands. How could she leave? Before this, her aptitude was so good that she was doted on by her family. How would she know that just because she came out to play once and got a little injured, it would completely destroy her talent? Then, how about we change the way we address each other? Chu Yang asked tentatively, Xiaowu, how old is your second brother? 21 years old. My second brother is very good. Mo Qingwu smiled sweetly. Look, I am only 10.5 years old this year, not even 17 years old. Your second brother is so much older than me. Chu Yang said, how can you call me uncle? When your second brother comes here, do you want him to call me uncle too? Wouldn't that be a mess? Don't you think so? Do you want me to call your second brother uncle too? That doesn't make sense, right? Chu Yang pursed his lips. He naturally couldn't agree to Mo Qingwu calling him uncle. But if Mo Tianji called him uncle them, even if he called me grandfather or ancestor, I would agree. The little girl stared with her big round eyes and said, yes, you are younger than my second brother. How can I call you uncle? Yes. Chu Yang hurriedly struck while the iron was hot and said, so you can't call me Uncle Chu Yang. You should call me Brother Chu Yang. Mo Qingwu bit her finger and looked at Chu Yang suspiciously. She said, but I feel that you are up to no good. You definitely have an ulterior motive. Chu Yang sweated a little. She could even tell that he was up to no good? Is this still a little girl? It was said that a woman's intuition was very accurate and powerful. This little girl's intuition wasn't bad either. How can I be up to no good? Chu Yang hurriedly defended himself. If this little girl had the impression that he was up to no good, it would be difficult to change it in the future. You see, I saved you and your uncle Chengyu when you came here, right? I brought you to see your injuries and treat them, right? Also, I bought you candied haws. Look, it's very sweet. Chu Yang hurriedly gave the candied haws away. He was a little embarrassed. He didn't expect anything in return for his kindness. But he was really despicable and shameless. He actually wanted to show off in front of others and get something in return. And the reward he wanted was for this little girl to marry him. I am too evil. Mo Qingwu's eyes were fixed on the candied haws from the moment he came in. But she was too embarrassed to ask for it. She hurriedly took it and took a bite. Her beautiful big eyes narrowed into crescents. She smiled and said, Brother Chu Yang is a good person. Chu Yang was very happy. He had finally taken the first step. If Mo Qingwu kept calling him Uncle Chu Yang, then he would have no chance at all. Who had seen a girl choose her uncle as her husband? A big stone in Chu Yang's heart was finally lifted. From uncle to brother. Yes, he was very satisfied. Chu Yang originally thought that he would have to spend a lot of effort to persuade her. He never thought that a stick of candied haws would be enough to buy her over. What was this saying? Yes, in the future, whoever bought the candied haws would have to go through him to give it to Mo Qingwu. Women can be considered, but men, I have to chase them far away. This little girl is too innocent and too gullible. There are too many perverts. I have to be careful. In that instant, Chu Yang's thoughts flashed like lightning. He was thinking very far ahead. His face was gentle for a moment, full of longing for a moment, serious for a moment, heavy for a moment, and murderous for a moment. Mo Qingwu ate the candied haws in big mouthfuls while looking at this brother Chu Yang. Why does this Uncle Chu Yang have to be Brother Chu Yang? So strange. Also, his face is so cute. It can change. White for a moment, black for a moment, red for a moment. When Uncle Mo Changyu finishes his cultivation, I will also let him change. Too strange. Ever since his rebirth, Chu Yang had always handled matters calmly. But it was the first time that his emotions had fluctuated so much like today's. After the little girl finished eating a stick of candied haws, she opened her small hand and took another stick. She ate until the corners of her mouth were full of sticky candy. She was beaming with joy. Chu Yang's heart was moved as he looked at her. He thought, if I use my mouth to kiss off the sugar stains on the corners of little Luo's lips. After thinking for a long time, he finally ran out of tea. After eating the sugar-coated haws, Mo Qingwu cleverly washed her hands. Then she thought for a while. Then she came to the medicine that Chu Yang had prepared for her. She looked at Chu Yang with a bitter face and tearful eyes. Elder brother Chu Yang, can I not drink this? It's too bitter. Not good. Chu Yang's face was stiff, but then he smiled. If you drink it, I will tell you a good story. You must keep your word. Mo Qingwu picked up the bowl of medicine with her small hand and gulped it down. Then she moved a small stool and sat in front of Chu Yang in a well-behaved manner. She rested her chin on her small hand and blinked her big eyes as she looked at Chu Yang, waiting to hear the story. There was even a sly smile on her face. Chu Yang slapped his forehead. He had been fooled. This little girl was born in a big clan. Although she was only 7 years old, she still had the ability to distinguish common medicinal herbs. Chu Yang was afraid that this bowl of medicine would be too bitter. After tasting it, although it was not very bitter, he had added a lot of cold honey. It was like sugar water. How could Mo Qingwu not smell it? She must have already smelled it and just set up a trap for Chu Yang to fall into. She wanted to listen to the story. If Chu Yang did not say that he would tell her a story, she would also happily drink it. Little demon. Chu Yang muttered in his heart. He thought, she is so young and already knows how to lie. What will she do when she grows up? He could only bitterly search for a story in his stomach, but Chu Yang had only said it casually to coax Mo Qingwu to take the medicine. How could he have prepared a story? After searching for a long time, he did not find any good story. Mo Qingwu's small face gradually turned ugly. She frowned and looked at Chu Yang suspiciously. She said disappointedly, Brother Chu Yang is lying, right? Her tone was full of distrust. Why would I lie? Brother Chu Yang will lie to anyone but you. Chu Yang suddenly had an idea. He had an idea. A long time ago. Chu Yang began. After a long time. Mo Qingwu's crisp voice said, this is not good. Tell me another one. Chu Yang wiped the sweat from his forehead. This one, then the next one I heard. This one is not good either. Tell me another one. Chu Yang was sweating profusely. He frowned with a bitter face. Then tell me. Still not good. Tell me another one. Chu Tsong's eyes stared blankly. Tell me. Still not good. Tell me another one. Chu Yang's head spun that year. Even worse. Little Luo glared at Chu Yang. She was about to flip out. Chu Yang fell to the ground. His face was ashen. He wanted to cry, but there were no tears. Oh my God. This chasing girls and picking them up is too difficult. How can I live like this? I can't even get through this day, huh? Mo Changyu had woken up at some point. Seeing Chu Yang's appearance, he could not help but laugh. He was rejoicing in Chu Yang's misfortune. Brother, you've finally experienced the pain that I've suffered. Chapter 122. Mo Changyu showed an expression of I want to help, but I can't as he spread out his hands. He said, Little miss, look at how good Uncle Chu Yang is to you. Let Uncle Chu Yang tell you a few nice stories. 1 inch it's big brother Chu Yang. The little girl was very fierce. Her red mouth and white teeth looked as if she wanted to bite someone. She clawed at him and said, Big brother Chu Yang is lying. His stories are not nice at all. Mo Changyu sweated a little and said, Okay, brother Chu Yang is brother Chu Yang. Big brother Chu Yang has a good story. He will tell it soon. Really, big brother Chu Yang? The little girl looked at Chu Yang with hopeful eyes full of desire. Cough, cough, cough. Chu Yang looked at Mo Changyu with grief and anger. Damn, you are too shameless. Even if you are shameless, you can't be shameless to this extent. Mo Changyu pretended not to see Chu Yang's eyes. He smiled and said, "Yes, I am. Miss, listen to Brother Chu Yang's story. It's very pleasant to hear." Buttocks with a turn. He disappeared without a trace. Hey! Chu Yang's outstretched hand stopped in midair. He was completely speechless. Big Brother Chu Yang, hurry up and tell me. Emo Qingwu reached out her small hand and gently pulled Chu Yang's sleeve. Her bright sleeves and big eyes made her look even more pitiful. Say something nice. Chu Yang. And after a long time, Chu Yang came out of the secret chamber. His steps were staggering, his face was pale, and his eyes were blank. His lips were dry. He sat down on the floor and groaned. He muttered, "Picking up girls is really good." He thought about how he would have to continue this picking up girls for at least 7 or 8 years, maybe even 10 years. Chu Yang's eyes turned white. He had a strong feeling of collapse. Emo Qingwu was not like this when she became an adult. She was usually smiling gently and was very gentle. She would look at him and then quietly do her own thing. She was charming and elegant. Why was Emo Qingwu so strange when she was young? Chu Yang sighed. Then, he strode to the front of the water tank and plunged his head into it. "I'm dying of thirst. If it were you, you wouldn't stop talking. Try a 2-hour story? Dude, this is going to kill people." However, Chu Yang was still very gratified. He even felt that Emo Qingwu was the real Emo Qingwu now. Just happy. He would rather Emo Qingwu maintain this kind of pure happiness even after a few years. Childishness could disappear, but happiness could not. From tomorrow onwards, I'll go read extensively and specifically look for stories to read. Chu Yang's heart was ruthless. I swear. In order to pick up girls, in order to raise them, I'm going all out. It was already afternoon. Chu Yang had finished cooking and brought the rice in. Then he carefully distributed the rice bags evenly. In an instant, half of the traces in the pot were washed away. The bottom half is left unbrushed, and the dishes served, 2 of them were removed and placed aside. The remaining one was placed in a messy position. Okay. Then Chu Yang gave Emo Qingyu a few words and left. Emo Qingyu was a king-level master. Of course, he was experienced and knew the severity of the situation. On this point, Chu Yang is very assured. Moreover, the secret chamber was related to the Calamity Sword. Chu Yang had built it for himself. If he was not a first-rate mechanism master, he would not have done it. Chu Yang went out to find Tai Butian. Tai Butian had lost a bet to him. That was the medicine in the palace. Chu Yang would not be courteous about it. Although it was said to be a joke, Chu Yang had to take it seriously for once. This was related to Emo Qingwu. Qingwu's lifelong happiness was not serious. Okay. After Chu Yang had left for more than 2 hours, suddenly, a few black shadows quietly landed in the sky. The warrior pavilion searched the entire island silently. Then they surrounded Chu Yang. The few pavilions that were built at the very center of the island. One of them approached like a ghost. Then he silently entered and looked around. After circling around, he did not find anything and quietly left. How is it? The one waiting outside was a black-clothed masked man. His eyes were gloomy. They flickered faintly like a dark fire in the dark night. There's no one here. It's very clean. That person said, according to our investigation, there are only 2 people here. Moreover, one of them has been out for more than 20 days and has not returned. There is only one person here. The traces inside are also very clear. Recently, there was indeed only one person here. Stay. One, go look for rice bags, pots, bowls, ladles, and basins. See if there's any medicine here. See if there are any traces of medicine. The black-clothed masked man's eyes were half closed as he spoke softly. Yes, throne. This time 3 or 4 people entered the room at the same time. That throne stood for a while. Then he also moved his feet and walked step by step into Chu Yang's room. I can't see anything from the rice bag. However, this guy is really sloppy. The floor is full of vegetable soup, pots and bowls. The pots and pans are all unwashed. From the smell, it seems that he has not tidied up since last night. He should be alone. There's no doubt about it. Oh. That throne walked into the kitchen suspiciously. As soon as he entered, he was almost smoked. His eagle-like eyes carefully examined every item. He then nodded lightly and said, yes, it's fine. It seems that there's only one person in here. Throne, I found the medicine storehouse. Go take a look. The so-called medicine storehouse was an almost sealed small room. Inside, there were some medicinal herbs that Chu Yang had no use for. They were scattered on the floor. Naturally, Chu Yang did not forget to leave behind some medicinal herbs that were relatively more precious. This guy is really lazy. However, there are some good things. That Throne stood at the door and looked at the messy piles of medicine inside. He frowned. There are 2 medicine pots here. One of the black-clothed masked men shouted. That king-level expert paced over. He slightly sniffed and said, this is obviously new. It hasn't been used yet. But this, motherfucker. This medicine was brewed at least a month ago. And the dregs of the medicine are still inside. Motherfucker. Chu Yang spent a lot of effort to collect the dregs of medicine. Now he could finally put them to good use. One of the masked men even pushed aside the rotten white hair. He wrinkled his nose and looked at the dregs inside. He said with certainty, it's for treating colds. Get lost. Who told you to look through it? Are you very knowledgeable? You actually said that it's for treating colds. That throne-level leader wrinkled his nose in anger. He slapped the masked man's face. Dregs from a month ago, even if it's for treating internal injuries, it shouldn't be related to the Mo clan. A month ago, Mo Chengyu was still sleeping in the Mo clan. It turned out that when that masked man looked through the dregs, the rotten smell of the dregs started to spread out. It made the medicine storehouse even more stinky than the public toilets in the barracks. Yes, I deserve to die. That masked man repeatedly admitted his mistake. He loosened his grip and threw the medicine pot away. It landed on the floor with a bang. It was a pot used to boil medicine. How strong can it be? Of course, it immediately broke into pieces. An even more intense stench spread out in all directions. That throne-level leader was furious. He slapped the masked man's face several times. Then, he covered his nose and ran out of the medicine storehouse. His movement was extremely fast. Once he was outside, he gasped for air. His eyes were filled with anger. He had seen brainless people before, but he had never seen such a brainless person. Everyone who was searching around covered their noses and ran out in a sorry state. Asterisk. What is this smell? Who made it? I already smelled it to death. The throne-level leader covered his nose and asked in a low voice, did you find anything? Is there any secret passage or something like that? His voice was filled with anger. I didn't find anything. If you didn't find anything, then why are you guys still here? Why aren't you leaving? Fuck your ancestors, do you think this place smells good? The throne-level leader was furious. With a whoosh, he flew into the air and disappeared without a trace. He had been wronged. He was a Heimo king-level leader and a king-level master of Jianghu. Even in the upper 3 heavens, he was still a powerful person. When had he ever been to such a dirty place? What a disgrace. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They covered their noses and cursed as they followed behind the throne-level leader. The last person was the knowledgeable guy. He couldn't help but retch. He vomited to his heart's content and walked away weakly. The throne-level leader's slaps were not in vain. After all, he had lost 2 teeth and half a mouthful of blood. Official Chu Yang naturally didn't know about these things. He was currently in the treasury of the palace. His Highness Butian was very puzzled by the fact that King of Hell Chu had come to his door to ask for a gambling debt. He was very puzzled. You just made a fool of yourself, okay? Why is it that you don't trust me and come to my door to ask for a debt? Am I that untrustworthy? You don't trust me? Besides, gambling debts are very common in Ironcloud Citadel. Every day there are even fights because of gambling debts. But gambling debts from the ruler of a nation, the actual ruler of a nation, is not something that can be done easily. This was very unusual. Therefore, Butian was very depressed. Looking at King of Hell Chu's anxious face, it was as if he would not give it to him if he was late. Your Royal Highness you haven't honored the bet that you just made. You lost to me one, right? Just look at what he said. Tai Butian almost fainted from anger. He gritted his teeth and said, Minister Chu, you are really something. Do you think I can renege on my gambling debt? Haha, cough. I was just afraid that your highness would forget things. Chu Yang was actually a little embarrassed, but he didn't show it. Who told him to be so thick-skinned? Being looked down on? It doesn't matter. As long as you honor your debt, you can look down on me as much as you want. As the saying goes, if you are thin-skinned, you can't eat. If you are thick-skinned, you can eat until you are satisfied. Chapter 123. This is it. Tai Butian said expressionlessly, Minister Chu, I'll wait for you outside. You can go in and pick whatever you want. It doesn't matter if you take them all. I won't have any complaints. Tai Butian was naturally very uncomfortable to be forced to pay off his gambling debts. Throughout history, he was probably the first person to be forced to pay off his gambling debts. This could be considered as a historical precedent. Tai Butian's heart was filled with resentment. These words were clearly meant to make things difficult for Chu Yang. Look at how generous I am. This is called elegance. This is called self-restraint. This is called temperament. Unlike you? Fuck, even if a hooligan wants to pay off gambling debts, he won't take them on the same day. Moreover, with just you alone, how much can you take away? Tai Butian was happy to be generous. Good, huh? Chu Yang's eyes lit up. He rubbed his hands together, ignoring Tai Butian's dissatisfaction. Waha, your highness is a good person. I'm going. Before he finished speaking, he had already disappeared with a shio sound. He impatiently dove into the cave. Tai Butian didn't even have time to say a few words of modesty before there was no one in front of him. He couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He thought to himself, this king of Hell Chu is like his predecessors who have gone mad from poverty. He just arrived at Iron Cloud and robbed dozens of big families in one night. Now that he's looking at the treasury of the palace, he's like a bandit who has entered a village. That excitement! I really despise him. As he thought, he ordered someone to bring a chair over and sat down in front of the treasury. He thought to himself, I'd like to see how much you can take away. Look at you, you miser. Humph. Chu Yang stepped into the treasury and was immediately dazzled. Oh my god, so many good things. The calamity sword in his dantian also became active, eager to try. Don't rush, let's do it bit by bit. Chu Yang was calm. Looking at the huge treasury, he was very excited. As expected of the palace, it had been accumulated over many years. At the very front, there were all kinds of strange metals. As if afraid that Chu Yang wouldn't recognize them, there were labels on each of them. So standard. Chu Yang clicked his tongue in admiration. This will save me a lot of effort. With a flick of his wrist, the sword tip of the calamity sword appeared in his hand, shining brightly. Suck. Don't be shy, just suck it. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Leave 1 or 2 pieces of those that aren't rare. Those rare ones are hard to find outside. Absorb them all. No problem. The sword tip of Calamity Sword was like a hungry wolf that had been starved for years. Following Chu Yang's hand gestures, they began to devour like wolves and tigers. Tai Butian had been waiting outside. But who would have thought that he wouldn't come out even after waiting for so long? So he couldn't help but become bewildered. Don't tell me that this king of Hell Chu ate those medicines alive? The treasure vault was only so big he couldn't possibly get lost, right? He wanted to go in and take a look, but his previous words were too arrogant. If he went in, it would seem that he was being watched. Moreover, this king of Hell Chu would say that he was a sore loser. After pondering for a long time, Tai Butian still sat at the door and didn't move. She also hardened her heart. King of Hell Chu, I want to see how long you can stay in there. I'm going to waste my time with you today. After a long while, just when Tai Butian was about to lose her patience. Finally King of Hell Chu came out. When King of Hell Chu came out, he looked a little unhappy and dissatisfied. It seemed that this treasure vault in the palace had greatly disappointed him. Chu Yang's left hand was holding a few medicinal herbs. In his right hand, he was holding 2 pieces of shining metal. After coming out, Chu Yang sighed. He was very sincere and extremely disappointed. You were inside for such a long time and you only picked out these few things? Tai Butian's eyes widened. Sigh. Chu Yang sighed again in disappointment. Then he raised his eyes and looked at Tai Butian. Your Highness, you are generous enough. But this treasure vault in the palace is really a little shabby. What's wrong? Tai Butian frowned. There really isn't much left, Chu Yang sighed. I searched left and right, I searched front and back. But in the end I only picked out these few things. As he said, he shook the 2 pitiful snow ginseng in his hand. The 2 pieces of metal in his right hand also touched each other, making a crisp sound. In this quiet space the sound spread far and wide. Compared to such a huge treasure trove, such a small amount of things was simply a pitiful burden. Only these few things? Tai Butian was a little surprised. Are your standards so high? Besides, these things aren't anything good in here. It's really. I'm too embarrassed to say it. Chu Yang said dejectedly, let's go. Wait. Tai Butian waved her hand. I'll go in and take a look. As she said, she dashed in, extremely vigorous. But after she went in, she was shocked. Was this still the treasure vault of the royal family? On each of the huge shelves, there were only a few pitiful pieces of metal on some shelves, and there were even some shelves that were completely empty. One by one, the labels trembled and swayed slightly with the sound of the wind brought by Tai Butian's sudden entrance, as if they were telling their infinite grievances. But there was a thick layer of dust on the shelves. Tai Butian looked at all this in disbelief. She kept muttering to herself, what's going on? What's going on? The pitiful Supreme Highness was a little confused. Chu Yang followed behind her and also walked in. He tried his best to say in a heavy voice, Supreme Highness, why do you have to do this? Actually, I'm already very satisfied to be able to find these 2 500-year-old snow ginseng today. Tai Butian turned a deaf ear to him and walked in. Inside was the medicinal herb vault. Tai Butian clearly remembered that there were many heavenly treasures in here. When she went in to take a look, she stumbled and almost fell to the ground. There were still many medicinal herbs in here, including ginseng and ganoderma. But those rare heavenly treasures that ordinary people might not even see in their entire lives were all gone. In fact, there weren't even any boxes. Tai Butian only felt a wave of dizziness and couldn't help but sway a little. Chu Yang very kindly hurriedly supported her and said, Supreme Highness, what's wrong? With this support, he felt that Tai Butian's shoulders were thin and weak but full of texture. Moreover, there was a faint feeling of a very slippery texture. Tai Butian calmly took a step forward and broke away from Chu Yang's support. She said, I really didn't expect that the royal family's treasure vault would actually fall to such a state. Your Highness also rarely comes to this treasure vault, right? Chu Yang said patiently. Of course. If there's nothing, why would I go to the treasure vault? I'm not a miser, Tai Butian said indifferently. Chu Yang didn't seem to realize that the miser that Tai Butian was referring to was himself. He only sighed and said, it's no wonder. After years of war, even a rich treasury would have long been empty. Every day, every hour, there are so many soldiers injured. No matter how many heavenly treasures there are, how can they save the lives of every warrior? Chu Yang's words had vaguely directed the spearhead to Tai Longcheng. Moreover, it was clear that even if all the medicines and things here were used up, they were used in the right way. Tai Butian was silent for a while. Then she slowly said, I think so. These things can be considered to be used to their full potential. When she saw the treasure vault in such a state, her first thought was exactly the same as Chu Yang's comforting words. In the whole world, only second uncle Tai Longcheng could come here and open this place. And second uncle's army thirsted for elixirs and strange metals. Needless to say, Tai Butian also knew. As for theft, there was no such possibility. If the elixirs were stolen, it might be possible. But those strange metals weighed hundreds of kilograms, and some even thousands of kilograms. How could they be stolen in such a heavily guarded place like the royal palace? Even if one could steal a piece, who would have the ability to empty the entire treasure vault? Even if a supreme martial artist came, he would definitely not be able to do it so stealthily. Tai Butian naturally didn't know that the real culprit was King of Hell Chu, who was standing in front of her with a look of disappointment on his face. It was really hard on this guy. He had secretly made a fortune to this extent, but he still had to put on a worried look. How strong was his willpower? What kind of mental cultivation was required to achieve such a feat? She turned her head to look at Chu Yang. Tai Butian felt very ashamed in her heart. She had solemnly asked Minister Chu to go in and take it himself. In the end, when Minister Chu went in, it was as if he had just taken a stroll around. Even those things in his hand seemed to be just a gesture to comfort her. Tai Butian clearly saw that there were many more things in this treasure vault that Minister Chu had in his hands. It was obvious that Minister Chu was afraid that she would lose face. So, he deliberately took 2 of those things to comfort her. Thinking of this, Tai Butian felt even more uncomfortable in her heart. Minister Chu is a man of noble character and unquestionable integrity. He is so honest and considerate. He is so good at thinking for others. Minister Chu, it's as if I haven't repaid my gambling debt today. Tai Butian said with a serious smile, however. I guarantee that I will definitely compensate Minister Chu for this loss. What are you saying, Your Highness? Minister Chu spoke with awe-inspiring righteousness. Originally, I only wanted these things to forge a few weapons to equip the army. I also wanted to see if I could create a kind of divine medicine to offer to the Crown Prince in order to relieve the pain of the wounded. So what's this, or not? Minister Chu said sincerely and solemnly. Your Highness is too serious. Tai Butian's heart surged. She couldn't help but look at Chu Yang with a strange expression. She tried hard to control her thoughts, but still couldn't help but pat Chu Yang's shoulder and said, Minister Chu, good. Good. Minister Chu is so benevolent and righteous. He's so considerate of the overall situation. He's such a hero with an open mind. So, how can he accept my offer of compensation to him? Not only will he not accept it, but it will also be an insult to Minister Chu's noble character. Chapter 124. The 2 walked out of the treasury side by side. Only then did they realize that the sky was already dark. In front of the palace, there was a person holding 2 horses waiting for the 2. It was Wu Qianqian. Seeing Chu Yang come out, Wu Qianqian was overjoyed. She said, Minister, please hurry back to Butian Pavilion. Something happened at Butian Pavilion. Something happened at Butian Pavilion? What happened? Chu Yang frowned. A group of people in black came. All of them are highly skilled in martial arts. They want us to hand over the people who came that day. Wu Qianqian said anxiously. We explained for a long time, but they still didn't believe us. They were about to fight. If you weren't outside, they would have asked you for an explanation. I'm afraid the consequences would be unimaginable. Chu Yang was shocked. He quickly got on his horse and said, Your Highness, this is urgent. I will go first. Then he said, Your Highness, please let the guards send you back to the imperial residence. Don't come to Butian Pavilion. I'm afraid there will be danger. As he said this, he took the fierce mask and cloak from Wu Qianqian. With a leap, he put them on neatly and landed on the horse's back. His 2 legs clamped together and the horse rushed out. Wu Qianqian followed closely behind. The 2 of them disappeared from Tai Butian's sight in the blink of an eye. Tai Butian's eyes flashed. He shouted, Return to the imperial residence immediately. I have important matters to attend to. At this moment he had already made up his mind. No matter what, he would let these 2 go to Butian Pavilion to see who was so daring. At this moment Butian Pavilion was in a complete mess. In the main hall, the 14 seats were all filled with people in black. On Chu Yang's seat sat a black-clothed masked man with a golden blade. His eyes were sinister and disdainful. He didn't seem to care about the organization that was created by the 3 empresses. In front of each person there was a cup of tea. Steam rose in spirals. Before Wu Qianqian left, she spent a lot of effort to persuade these people to sit here peacefully. At the side, in the small courtyard of the fierce blood hall, faint echoes of the Ho could be heard intermittently. There were people who were injured because they tried to stop these people. These people were the people that Chu Yang hated to the core. They were the ones who injured Mo Qingwu, the Heimo clan. They had finally come knocking on his door. After all, that day at the city gate, Chu Yang ordered the large man to be sent to Butian Pavilion. That was under the watchful eyes of many people. It would be strange if they did not hear about it. The sound of horses galloping could be heard outside. The eyes of the black-clothed people in the main hall lit up. Is the legendary king of Hell Chu finally going to appear? The sound of horse hooves suddenly stopped at the entrance. Then hurried footsteps sounded. A person wearing a ferocious mask and a black cloak walked in quickly and calmly. In the night, under the illumination of the lamplight, the 2 gazes were like 2 cold stars, steady and calm. Chu Yanwang finally appeared at the entrance of the main hall. Chu Li's clear and cold eyes slowly sized up his surroundings. Then, he asked the 14 masked men in black who had not stood up, "Have you all come here to look for this Chu?" Chu Yan's reply to King of Hell was not deliberately estranged. Instead, it was very warm. It was clear that his current state of mind was very peaceful. There was a hint of surprise in his voice, as if he had no idea what these people were here for. "Are you King of Hell Chu? The minister of Butian Pavilion?" The black-clothed man sitting at the top snorted coldly. He chuckled and said, "What great prestige, what great arrogance." Chu Yang's legs went soft. It was not because he was afraid. It was because when he was in the treasury, due to the lack of time, he used all of his energy and mental energy to help the Calamity Sword devour. When it finally finished devouring, it directly caused Chu Yang's energy to run out. Not even a bit was left. Then something like this happened again. He had galloped all the way back and didn't have time to adjust his breathing. However, Chu Yang had deliberately done this. Since the timing was so coincidental, Chu Yang naturally wanted to use these people's mouths to spread the extremely absurd rumor that he did not know any martial arts. In front of the seniors, this official naturally does not dare to do anything. Although Chu Yang was wearing a mask, his voice gave people the feeling of a spring breeze. It was as if he had seen a good friend he had not seen for many years. There was warmth in his voice. When he opened his mouth, he referred to himself as this official. His meaning was, "I am a court official, not a Jianghu person. When you talk to me, try not to use the Jianghu methods." Oh, as a king-level master, how good was his eyesight? The man sitting at the head of the table saw through Chu Yang's situation. He could not help but be a little surprised. This minister of Butian Pavilion, the most important person in Iron Cloud, did not have the slightest bit of energy in his body. Moreover, his mental energy was pitifully weak. He was completely an ordinary person who did not know any martial arts. When he walked, his footsteps were light and his eyes were lifeless. The muscles on his body did not have the unique luster of a martial artist. He really did not know any martial arts. Could it be that the rumors were wrong? "You have come from afar. I have not asked for your guidance. Where are you going?" Chu Yang cupped his fists and asked, "Who are we?" "Everyone knows." The other experts looked at him sinisterly. "Today I came to ask Minister Fu about some things and understand some things." "Haha, I know why you are all here." Chu Yang calmly walked into the main hall. He walked into the area surrounded by the 2 king-level masters and the 12 revered martial artists. Then, he glanced around and sat down on a seat next to them. "You know?" The king-level master looked at Chu Yang with a sinister gaze. At this moment, Chu Yang was very close to him. He could see that he was not mistaken. This was an ordinary person. 2 days ago at the city gate, this lowly official found 2 people. At that time, they were already seriously injured, so I took the liberty to send them to Butian Pavilion. Chu Yang's voice was full of regret, but there was no trace of regret. Where are those 2 people now? The king-level expert's eyes were fixed on Chu Yang. Under the pressure of his eyes, even if Xiao was an ordinary person, even if he was a revered martial artist, he would be immediately exposed if he told half a lie. Haha. Senior must know that in our Iron Cloud, talents are precious. Chu Yang sighed. After years of war, the strength of the nation has long been exhausted. The lack of talents is also extremely serious. Ever since this Chu received His Highness' favor and entered Butian Pavilion, I have been worried day and night, unable to sleep at night. The situation is very serious, and I often sigh that I am powerless. Chu Yang said slowly. The king-level master's eyes showed a trace of impatience, but he still did not say anything. That day, I suddenly discovered an expert who was in trouble in my Iron Cloud. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and said, "So I had the thought of recruiting him." When he said this, the 14 men in black in the main hall snorted disdainfully. "Recruit? Do you think he is an ordinary person? He is from the Mo clan, and he is a king-level master. Let's not talk about the fact that he is seriously injured. Even if you acknowledge him as your godfather, how could he possibly accept the recruitment of someone from the lower 3 heavens?" But when he said this, everyone came to a sudden realization. Chu Yang's motive for saving those 2 people at that time was completely unmistakable. Everyone put themselves in Chu Yang's shoes and thought that if they were in the same position as Butian Pavilion's minister, They would probably have the same thoughts. The current ironclad was really too difficult. Facts have proven that this official thought too much. Chu Yang sighed in disappointment. What happened to those two people? The king-level master's eyes flashed behind his mask as he asked. Even he did not realize that his voice had softened a lot compared to before. She was doing her best for her country, and she was doing it without knowing it. How could you blame her for it? That big man was not a problem. Although his internal and external injuries were serious, he would recover after a period of rest. But that little girl was a bit difficult to deal with. At such a young age, she was frightened and injured. She almost died. Chu Yang used a respectful tone and said, "Thank you, His Royal Highness, for taking two people to the palace to find Senior Du Shiqing." But the unexpected thing was that the little girl's injuries were too serious. Senior Du was only able to alleviate the situation and temporarily save her life. He could not cure her. The king-level master in black pondered and slowly nodded. His sword was blocked by a Mo Chengyu, but it was not something a little girl could withstand. This guy's words should not be false. Chu Yang's words were partly true and partly false. Aside from his own motives, everything else was true. Naturally, it would make it sound very convincing. And then that big man. Speaking of which, this brother is really loyal and courageous. He is truly a good man. Chu Yang was not stingy with his praise for Mo Chengyu. He said with admiration, under such circumstances, he immediately wanted to leave. After half a day of rest, he wanted to take his little master to find a famous doctor. This lowly official tried every possible way to persuade him to stay. At that time, I even proposed that if he was willing to stay, I would give up the position of Minister of Butian Pavilion. Even with such conditions, he was still not moved. Chu Yang sighed in admiration. His only condition was that as long as we could cure his little brother, he would agree to do one thing for us. It's a pity that we can't fulfill this condition. Can't do it. Hee. The sovereign laughed, full of disdain. He thought to himself, I personally released the Hayamo sword energy and you want to break it? You are overestimating yourself. You're not telling the truth. You are lying to me. The king-level master sensed that Chu Yang was very serious and was telling the truth. But in the end there was some uncertainty. Chapter 125. Chu Yang looked at the king-level leader with sincerity and said, Senior, this Jianghu expert is a man of his word. This official believes in him. Therefore I am looking forward to it. I even have some plans for what I want to do in the future. However, this matter is a secret between Butian Pavilion and me. It is related to the war between the two countries. I ask Senior to keep it a secret. The king-level leader slowly took the lead and looked at the other person. They both knew what was going on. Yes, this was in line with Mo Chengyu's pedantic, a drop of water should be repaid with a spring of water character. You, King of Hell Chu, are quite honest. The king-level leader said gloomily, however, that so-called expert. I am afraid he will not be able to do anything for you. Why? Chu Yang smiled and said, I can see that brother is a man of his word. He is a man of his word. Of course, such a man would keep his word. Haha. Why? Of the 14 masked men, 10 of them laughed mockingly. One of them jokingly said, because the person you are talking about is about to die at the hands of our king-level leader. How can a dead man repay a debt of gratitude? Ah! Chu Yang's eyes revealed a look of extreme shock. He stammered this. Where did they go? The king-level leader coldly snorted. I really do not know. King of Hell Chu seemed to be immersed in a great sense of loss. He actually pleaded, Senior, can you be merciful to that person? Such a good person, if he dies it would be a pity. King of Hell Chu sighed. This matter is not for a rotten secular official like you to decide. The king-level leader coldly looked at him with a cold gaze. Chu Yang shivered at the perfect moment. Then he forced himself to look calm. The two king-level leaders looked at each other. Their lips faintly moved as if they were discussing something. Although they were people of the Hayamo clan who could not return in 3 days, they did not want to go against a secular country. Seeing that there was no result, they naturally had to leave. Chu Yang nervously opened his mouth. He wanted to say something but stopped. What else do you want to say? The Lord of the Throne was sensitive enough to notice his little movements. It's like this. I find it difficult to speak. Chu Yang stammered, Seniors, you are all experts with supernatural powers. My iron cloud is currently in a perilous situation. If I may be so bold, I will tell you. Chu Yin King's eyes became awe-inspiring and righteous. It seemed as if he was ready to risk everything. He stood up, clasped his hands, and said in a loud voice, May this Chu be so bold as to ask the seniors, if you can lend a hand to my iron cloud? From top to bottom of iron cloud, millions of people are grateful. Audacious? You sure are bold. The black-clothed king-level expert almost burst into laughter. You saved our enemy and helped him escape. Not killing you is already an extra favor. Yet, you still want to recruit us? The king-level expert's words caused all the experts of the Hayamo clan to burst into laughter. Everyone looked at this king of Hell Chu with ridicule in their eyes. They felt that this was somewhat outrageous. Chu Yang was silent for a moment. Then he seriously said, Senior, you are wrong. Before I saved him, I didn't know about the grievances between you. Moreover, even if you knew, what would you do? The black-clothed king-level expert coldly asked. Chu Yang straightened his chest and said in a loud voice, Even if I knew, as long as there was even the slightest possibility that he would be recruited by me to help my iron cloud, I would still save him, even if it was just a promise. These words were powerful and resonant. Chu Yang stared at this king-level expert. He didn't back down for a moment. In an instant, all the black-clothed people in the main hall were stunned by these words. This Minister Chu was just an ordinary person, and didn't have the slightest bit of martial strength. However, the imposing manner he displayed at this moment was extremely upright. The courage he displayed at this moment was also very admirable. The black-clothed king-level expert coldly stared at Chu Yang. After a while, he finally sighed deeply and said, Good Minister Chu. Good King of Hell Chu. His voice actually contained a hint of admiration. Then he brushed his sleeves and stood up. He lightly said, This old man came here today with the intention of raising this Butum pavilion to the ground if I couldn't find the person. However, you are indeed worthy of being King of Hell Chu. Today this old man will let you go. Let's go. With this order, the 13 black-clothed people stood up at the same time and walked out. No one said a word. With a king-level expert's order, naturally, no one dared to refute. On the other hand, these murderous and merciless executioners were also subdued by Chu Yang. An ordinary person who didn't have the slightest bit of martial strength was actually able to speak calmly and confidently under the pressure of a king-level expert. This kind of bearing and calmness was already evident. Moreover, Minister Chu had displayed his chivalry, righteousness, and courage for the sake of the country and the people. He was a righteous man. Such a loyal man would be respected no matter where he was. Even if they were evil people, they still respected heroes. What's more, it's just a misunderstanding. The black-clothed king-level expert was the last to leave. He fluttered to the door and turned back to look at Chu Yang. In his malicious eyes, there was a faint trace of warmth. He said, Unfortunately, you don't know martial arts. However, if Iron Cloud is destroyed, would you be willing to follow my family? Damn! Chu Yang was startled. He didn't think that his performance would attract the attention of Mo Qingwu's great enemy. I was born a citizen of Iron Cloud, and I will die a ghost of Iron Cloud. If Iron Cloud is destroyed, then I would have already turned into ashes before the country was destroyed. Senior's good intentions, I can only accept it. Chu Yan replied in a heroic manner. He wasn't lying. If Iron Cloud was destroyed, then Chu Yang's plan to defy the heavens and change fate would fail. Then his master would die, his brothers would die, and Qingwu would not survive. Then Chu Yang would feel that there was no meaning in living anymore. Good man. What a pity. What a pity. The king-level expert said what a pity twice in a row. Then he fluttered away and disappeared into the night sky. A faint voice was heard. Carefully search the other places of Iron Cloud. He is seriously injured. How can he walk? After they left, a shadowy figure silently flew up from the top of the main hall and disappeared in a flash. Even the 2 king-level experts of the Hayamo clan did not notice when this person came. He finally left. Chu Yang sat on the ground feeling weak all over. After today, Qing Wu's threat from the Heimo clan should have been eliminated a lot, right? Just now, he answered correctly because he relied on the Ran body's strength. Now that he relaxed, he felt that his whole body was exhausted to the point of no return. Was the aura of a king-level expert so easy to endure? Chu Yang took a deep breath and tried to mobilize the remaining energy in his dantian. After a long time he felt his dantian slowly move. He controlled his qi and circulated it 3 times. Suddenly, with a boom, a large amount of vital qi surged out from his meridians. It rushed into his meridians and merged with the qi of the Calamity Sword. Then the 7 cold qi absorbed by the Calamity Sword suddenly surged out and wrapped around this vital qi. His Junqi surged upwards, and with the momentum of breaking through bamboo, it arrived at the bottleneck of Wumo. It was like 100 zhang tall raging wave crashing against a dam that could not withstand a single blow. It actually surged through the bottleneck without stopping. Then it continued to surge and sweep through the meridians. The bottleneck that had not been broken for a long time was broken through at this moment without any hindrance. Chu Yang could not help but be overjoyed. He closed his eyes and guided the energy in his body to break through the bottleneck. At the same time, he sank his mind into his sea of consciousness and tried to use the soft water power that he had just comprehended to penetrate this turbulent energy. In an instant, he entered a state where he forgot about everything around him. He had already exhausted all his energy and mental energy. He had to force himself to fight against 2 king-level experts and 12 revered martial artists. He also had to control his mind and not panic. He also had to deceive the other party. Even if he was at his peak and his physical strength and mental energy were at their peak, he would not be able to withstand this kind of mental pressure. However, he relied on his unparalleled willpower and the pure strength of his flesh to forcefully endure all of it. Although he appeared calm and collected on the surface, in reality, his mental state was so tense that it was on the verge of breaking. Moreover, when his mental energy was at its peak, Shifang suddenly left. This kind of pressure that exceeded his limit by more than 10 times to a sudden feeling of relaxation actually made his bottleneck disappear. Once he recovered, he did not need to break through. He actually automatically entered the realm of martial master. Although he had been stuck at this bottleneck for a few days, breaking through so easily still made Chu Yang extremely happy. Chu Yang cultivated in the main hall, while Wu Qianqian stood quietly outside the door. Since Chu Yang entered the main hall, he did not deliberately lower his voice. Including Wu Qianqian, Chang'ang, and Chen Yutong. All of them clearly heard Chu Yang's words. The 3 of them had different feelings in their hearts. Chang'ang and Chen Yutong had more or less the same thoughts. What kind of people were inside? The 2 of them knew in their hearts. Perhaps the weakest of them was about the same as the 2 of them. It could be said that the person inside would only need to cough once, and Minister Chu would be jolted back to his death. But Chu Yang was neither servile nor overbearing. He calmly faced them. Although he spoke in a gentle tone, he did not back down a single step. If it were someone else who could do it, perhaps they would have already wet their pants in fear. Finally, he even said, "Live as an Iron Cloud person, die as an Iron Cloud ghost. If Iron Cloud is destroyed, then I would have turned into ashes before the country was destroyed." His righteousness was awe-inspiring. His magnanimity was majestic, his loyalty was righteous, and his jade blood pill was reborn. All of these were clearly seen. In the end, even these hostile people who had come to cause trouble were subdued by Minister Chu's unyielding character. Not to mention Chang'ang and Chen Yutong who were listening from the side. At that moment the 2 of them almost burst into tears. Chapter 126. This is a mistake. It should be breaking through to martial artist, not martial master. I have neglected the martial artist position. I am very sorry. Fortunately, my brothers reminded me in the book review section. Thank you. Chen Yutong and Chang'ang looked at each other and felt the little knot in their hearts disappear quietly. From each other's eyes, they could see a kind of fanaticism and worship. Minister Chu is the #1 martyr of Iron Cloud. To work under such a minister, they would be happy even if they died. Only Wu Qianqian was a little doubtful. Chu Yang's performance today was remarkable. If Wu Qianqian did not know Chu Yang before, she would have believed him without a doubt. But now she was very doubtful. Chu Yang, he is actually such a person? Such a noble character and righteousness that inspires reverence? Such a person for the country, for the people and for the common people? Doesn't seem like it. In the imperial residence, Tai Butian frowned tightly. A figure stood quietly in front of him. Minister Chu, haha, what a good Minister Chu. Tai Butian raised his eyebrows and smiled quietly. He said softly, the reasons that Minister Chu said are not the real reasons. After listening to Ying's reply, he kept thinking. Ying was a person who did not like to talk and cherished his words like gold. But he was forced by Tai Butian to repeat the scene at that time. He almost broke down when he talked about it. Tai Butian thought for a long time before he finally came to a conclusion. He sighed and said, if Minister Chu said these words from his heart, how good would that be? It's a pity, it's a pity. It was not that it was too difficult to come to a conclusion, but that Tai Butian had always had that kind of hope. But Chu Yang's words of loyalty and righteousness made Tai Butian lose that kind of extravagant hope. Chu Yang stood up and stretched his body. He only heard the sound of his joints cracking. He opened his eyes and 2 rays of light shot out. I finally broke through. I am now a first-grade martial artist. A first-grade martial artist is not much in this world. There are too many sects in the lower 3 heavens. The core strength is made up of martial artists. Moreover, most of them are 5th grade and above martial masters. For the super clans in the upper 3 heavens and the lower 3 heavens, a first-grade martial artist is not surprising. The lowest level of power in the clans are also at this level. Normally, martial artists wouldn't be allowed to go out on missions, because going out would only result in death. Even if he was a rank 1 martial artist, he would still have to train hard at home. According to Chu Yang's age, his birthday was in the 12th lunar month. He would be 17 years old in a few months. At this age, most of the direct descendants of the big clans were already 3rd or 4th grade martial masters. A super genius like Gu Dusheng had already entered the ranks of martial great masters. It was nothing to be proud of. But all of this had overlooked one point, and that was that the cultivation conditions of those geniuses were far from what Chu Yang could compare with. Even though the treasury of the lower 3 heavens had a lot of wealth, it couldn't compare to the clans of the lower 3 heavens in terms of resources. The density of spiritual energy in the lower 3 heavens was much higher than that in the lower 3 heavens. Heavenly treasures could only grow in places with dense spiritual energy. The geniuses of the 3 heavens basically grew up eating those things. Chu Yang had basically never eaten those heavenly treasures. Another point was that those geniuses had all started to cultivate their foundation from a young age, and then gradually improved. A 20-year-old Wu Zong, including the innate foundation he had in his mother's womb, was equivalent to 21 years of cultivation. And Chu Yang's previous foundation was so weak that it made one's hair stand on end. It had only been half a year since his rebirth. In half a year, he had advanced from 3rd grade martial warrior to 1st grade martial warrior. He had advanced by 8 grades. Even though it wasn't difficult for a youngster with decent aptitude to advance at such a low level, such a speed was simply unparalleled in the space realm. Since ancient times there had never been such a thing. Chu Yang, how are you feeling? Are you tired? Wu Qianqian seemed to have been waiting at the side. At this moment she brought a bowl of steaming hot soup and a large bowl of white rice. You haven't eaten anything in the middle of the night. Chu Yang was feeling hungry. He took the soup and rice and almost buried his head in it, wolfing it down. Wu Qianqian pursed her lips as she watched Chu Yang eat. The corners of her mouth could not help but curve into a happy smile. Oh no! Chu Yang had just eaten a few mouthfuls when he suddenly raised his head. What time is it now? It's 9 o'clock in the morning. You have been meditating, so I told them not to disturb you. Wu Qianqian said softly. Oh no, oh no. Chu Yang's lips were still stained with rice. He put down the 2 bowls with a bang. He had only eaten half of it before he rushed out. What are you doing? You already ate. Wu Qianqian stomped her feet behind him. But Chu Yang had already run faster and faster. In the blink of an eye he had disappeared. He only waved his hand from afar. I have an urgent matter. The rice and soup were delicious, thank you. Seeing Chu Yang disappear, Wu Qianqian stomped her feet hatefully. She gently bit her red lips and muttered, what urgent matter can be more important than your own health? This Chu Yang is really, Wu Qianqian cleaned up the 2 bowls and looked at the remaining half of the soup and rice. She could not help but blush as she remembered Chu Yang's words before he left. The rice and soup were delicious. As long as you think it's delicious, I will make more for you tomorrow, Wu Qianqian whispered to herself. After she finished speaking, she looked around for a while as if she was afraid that someone would hear her. She then turned her head back, pursed her lips, and smiled with a red face. Chu Yang forgot that there was an adult and a child who had not eaten yet. If the 2 of them ran out now, the consequences would be unimaginable. He hurriedly returned to Emerald Flow Lake and opened the door to Heavenly Armament Pavilion. He almost staggered from the smell and cried out, "Oh my God, it's so smelly!" Although it was extremely smelly, Chu Yang was not scared. Instead, he was happy. This meant that people from the Hayamo clan had already been here. Moreover, they had searched very carefully. Otherwise, they would not have broken this extremely smelly medicine jar. Thinking about the scene of the Hayamo clan's people breaking this medicine jar in anger, Chu Yang wanted to laugh out loud. Thinking about this, he quickly walked inside. But after he took 2 steps, there was a rustling sound coming from inside. Someone is still here? Chu Yang tiptoed closer to take a look. He saw Mo Qing Wu's small figure busying herself with a silk scarf covering her nose to block the stench. Then she clumsily tidied up the messy things in Chu Yang's room. Chu Yang's eyes became hot, and he could not help but feel a little hazy. Through the tears, he seemed to see the Mo Qing Wu from his previous life. Every time she came to his room, she would be busy tidying up for him. In front of his eyes, there seemed to be a slim figure, silently looking at him, and softly calling out, "Chu Yang Qing Wu." Chu Yang murmured. The pain in his heart spread like a tide. "Chu Yang. Brother Chu Yang, you are back. What did you call me for?" Mo Qing Wu's childish voice rang out, interrupting Chu Yang's memories. "Nothing, little Wu. Why did you suddenly come out?" Chu Yang shook his head and took a few steps forward. He tenderly held Mo Qing Wu's small hand and looked at it. He said somewhat reproachfully, "You are so small. What if you hurt yourself? Don't do this in the future." Mo Qing Wu responded obediently. Although she was young, she could feel Chu Yang's deep concern for her. She tilted her head and smiled. "Uncle Chang, you vomited blood again. Now he is seizing the time to practice martial arts. Little Wu is hungry, so I came out to find something to eat." As she spoke, she covered her nose with her small hand and fanned twice, saying, "But I didn't expect Brother Chu Yang's room to be so messy. Stinks. Brother Chu Yang, you are really sloppy." Chu Yang was speechless for a while and hurriedly explained, "These are all deliberately done by Brother Chu Yang. When those bad guys come, they will see that this place is so messy and won't be able to find little Wu. Then little Wu will be safe." "Oh, I see." Mo Qing Wu's eyes reddened. She said guiltily, "So Brother Chu Yang did all this for little Wu. But I misunderstood you. Brother Chu Yang, I am sorry, it's okay. Since this place is like this, those people must have been here." Chu Yang said, "You just sit here obediently. I am going to clean up and cook for you. You haven't eaten for so long, you must be hungry, right?" Mo Qing Wu sniffled. Then she pitifully rubbed her small belly. "My small belly is flat." You see, as she spoke, she actually lifted up her shirt, revealing her snow-white belly. She pointed at it and said, "Look, isn't it flat? Originally it was round when I was full." Chu Yang felt dizzy. He quickly put down her shirt and said, "Little Wu, a girl's belly can't be casually shown to others. Remember, Mother didn't say." Mo Qing Wu shook her head. Chu Yang slapped his forehead. He thought to himself that he was really possessive. Mo Qing Wu was only 3 years old. So what if someone saw it? But even though he thought this way, he still subconsciously didn't want others to see it. Chu Yang hurriedly cleaned up the room. First, he dug up a few layers of dirt from the pot and threw it into Emerald Flow Lake. Only then did the stench dissipate a little. Then, he lit up 40 to 50 incense sticks in one breath. After a while, Mo Qing Wu sniffled and tiptoed around like a puppy. She sniffed around and excitedly announced, "It doesn't smell anymore." Chu Yang sweated profusely. He didn't expect this little girl to have such a trick up her sleeve. He cooked a few dishes and cooked a big pot of rice. Then he refused Mo Qing Wu's help and cooked 3 times before moving into the secret underground room. In the north, Mo Changyu had just woken up from his cultivation. As soon as he woke up, this king-level master was bombarded with accusations. He was scolded by a little martial artist. What's wrong with you? Didn't I tell you not to let little Wu go out? Right now, there are Mo people everywhere. What if we are discovered? You are already so old and a king-level master. Can't you think of something like this? Mo Chengyu's face turned red. He knew he was in the wrong, so he didn't dare to refute. He obediently bowed his head and accepted the scolding. Brother Chuyang, Uncle Changyu also told me not to go out. But little Wu was hungry, so I sneaked out. Can you not scold Uncle Changyu anymore? Mo Changyu pulled Chuyang's sleeve and gently shook it, pleading for Mo Changyu. Little Wu, don't worry about him. Today he must suffer. Chuyang was not going to let it go. He was very angry. You are a king-level master. You were protecting Mo Changyu, but you let her suffer such a serious injury. This is a dereliction of duty. Seeing that you have serious internal injuries, I endured for more than a day, and now you made another mistake. Chapter 127. Chuyang was very angry. Mo Changyu was outside by herself, so when he came back, he was scared out of his wits. But in front of the young Mo Changyu, he could not get angry. So when he saw Mo Changyu, he vented all of his anger on him. He glared at him and scolded him until his saliva flew everywhere. Mo Changyu's eyes were wide open as he scolded Chuyang, a king-level master being scolded by a martial artist. This feeling was very strange, especially when this little martial artist did not stop. He scolded him for a full quarter of an hour. Mo Changyu's face turned purple as if it was going to explode. His ears were red as he clenched his teeth, but he did not dare to lose his temper. He had a vague thought in his heart. This Chuyang cares more about the little miss than me. Looking at him, it is as if his wife was stolen. Chuyang finally ended his reprimand. In short, you have failed in your duty, and I am very angry. If this kind of situation happens again, you, a king-level expert, don't want to live anymore. Dig a hole and bury yourself in it as soon as possible. Mo Changyu had not eaten for a whole day, so his stomach was rumbling with hunger. But now he was scolded to the point that he had no place to eat. This guy was not polite at all. Pointing and scolding was not enough. He even leaned over and scolded him. In the end, he even jumped up and scolded, "Fuck you. I am a king-level master. When have I ever been treated like this? Even the clan leader has never treated me like this." Mo Changyu's heart was in a mess. Mo Changyu did not feel anything. Her only thought was, Brother Chuyang is too good to me. Especially when Chuyang scolded him, he did not forget to flatter him. After a few sentences he would say, Xiaowu is so beautiful and cute. If Chuan is like this, how can you bear it? Xiaowu is so smart. If she goes, won't you feel guilty? Xiaowu is so smart and lovable. Therefore, Mo Changyu was scolded to the point where he couldn't even lift his head. He almost wanted to commit suicide to atone for his sins. But little Luo, who was listening from the side, was somewhat enraged. Although she still couldn't bear it, when she heard Chuyang say, let's eat. Little Luo grabbed her chopsticks and began to eat heartily. After being praised, her appetite was greatly stimulated. Her chopsticks fell like rain. When she was half full, she squinted her cute eyes and said, Brother Chuyang, is Xiaowu really as good as you say? Of course, Chuyang was also hungry, so he ate quickly. But when he heard this, he immediately stopped chewing. He turned his head and said very seriously, Xiaowu, remember this? What? Xiao Luo was a little confused. Remember, in this world you are the most beautiful, the smartest, the cutest, the best, the best, the best, Chuyang said solemnly. His tone was very serious, as if he was making an oath. Wow! Little Luo jumped up in joy. She was so happy that she lost her sense of direction. Then she rubbed her clothes embarrassedly. Is it really that good? That look in her eyes was obviously hoping for an affirmative answer from Chuyang. Of course, Chuyang wouldn't disappoint such a well-behaved little Luo. He nodded solemnly and said with certainty, of course. Xiaowu is definitely better than what I said. 100 times better. 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Little Luoji beamed with delight. She opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. Suddenly she pounced on Chu Yang, hugged his neck, and kissed his face with all her might. Her oily little mouth kissed Chu Yang's face fiercely, leaving a clear oily mark. Then she let go and praised, "Brother Chu Yang, you're also the best in my heart. The best, the best, the best." Chu Yang touched his cheek. It seemed that he could still feel that gentle touch. He couldn't help but smile foolishly. Oh heavens, I finally took the first step. And got a kiss. Qing Wu's kiss. Although she is just a little luo luo who doesn't know anything and is greasy. After that, the atmosphere became even more harmonious. Mo Qing Wu ate a few mouthfuls of rice. Then she would squint her eyes, tilt her head, and smile at Chu Yang. Then she would eat a few more mouthfuls of rice, and smile foolishly once again. Chu Yang naturally returned the favor. From time to time he would smile encouragingly. Eat this bone. And this meat, Xiao Wu, come eat this." Chu Yang eagerly urged her to eat this. "Uncle Changyu hasn't eaten yet. There isn't much food left." Mo Qing Wu looked at the little food on the plate and was a little worried. Just now, in a moment of happiness, she had eaten more than twice as much as usual. "He is not hungry. Don't worry about him. Come eat this." Chu Yang didn't care about Mo Changyu's life or death. "Who said I am not hungry?" Mo Changyu angrily said. Earlier, he had lost his appetite because of Chu Yang's scolding. Then he saw the two of them flattering each other. Their words were exaggerated. Their tone was passionate, and their expressions were flattering. It made him want to vomit. The little miss was still young, so there was nothing wrong with that. But you, Chu Yang, you are already an adult, yet you still do such a thing. Your expression is even more exaggerated than the little miss. His appetite, which had just been aroused, immediately disappeared after seeing Chu Yang's expression. Plus, he felt full and wanted to vomit. At this moment, Chu Yang was becoming more and more excessive. He didn't even leave his food. Mo Changyu was furious. This is too much. After a few mouthfuls, the plate was already empty. Mo Changyu raised his chopsticks and looked at the empty plates. He was very depressed. Not only did he step on nothing, but he also lost his food. He had just started to eat when he felt the most hungry. Looking at the other side, Mo Qing Wu was holding her belly and rolling around on the bed. "Wow, I ate too much." She secretly lifted her friend's clothes and said with a bitter face, oh no. My belly is not only round, but it is also bulging." Chu Yang burped. Then, he calmly picked his teeth and said, "Is it delicious? Tomorrow Big Brother will make more for you." "Very good." "Humph." Mo Qing Wu happily patted her belly. In fact, it was not because the food was too good, but because Chu Yang's praise made her happy and her appetite increased. "I haven't eaten yet." Mo Changyu angrily said. "Little Wu, come, let's move around. Big Brother will help you digest. If you eat too much, you will become a little fat girl and you won't be pretty." Chu Yang ignored him. Hearing the serious consequences of won't be pretty, Mo Qing Wu was very cooperative. She rolled off the bed and started to move around the table with Chu Yang. While exercising, her small mouth did not stop moving. "Big Brother Chu Yang, do you think I will be pretty when I grow up? You will definitely be beautiful. You will be so beautiful that you cannot be more beautiful." "Really? Really? In this world, there's no one more beautiful than Xiao Wu. Really? Ha ha ha. When Big Brother Chu Yang grows up, you will definitely be the most handsome." "Is that true? Ha ha. Go Chuan." Sighed. Mo Changyu sighed. He wanted to cry but had no tears. With one big and one small by his side, it was a great torture. He could not bear to live through this day. Early in the morning, Chu Yang went out and came back with a big basket of rice and cured meat. He threw it in front of Mo Changyu and said, "Hey, are you hungry? Get lost." Mo Changyu's eyes were filled with tears as he shouted. The next day morning, Great Zhao Qingyu Manor. Diwu Qingro looked at a piece of paper in front of him and frowned. On this piece of paper there were only a few words. "Many years of hard work. I have done my best. What do you all think?" Diwu Qingro stood up and put the paper on the wall. Then he took 3 steps back to look at the words on the wall. Next to him there were 3 other people. One of them was the skinny guy who appeared the other day. Looking at this handwriting, it should be number 1's handwriting. The skinny man muttered to himself as he looked at it carefully and said with certainty, These three people were Diwu Qingrou's confidants. Each of them was very resourceful and had the ability to take charge of an area. The skinny guy was called Han Buchu. Another one was called Cheng Yunhe. The last one was a righteous young man called Gao Sheng. Han Buchu and Cheng Yunhe's background was very clear, but Gao Sheng's background was very mysterious. Plus, he had only been in Great Zhao for a few years, but he had already gained Diwu Qingrou's favor and had a meteoric rise. Moreover, he was very arrogant and looked down on everyone else. Gao Sheng looked righteous, but he had a belly full of evil intentions. He often had the same views as Diwu Qingrou. He was Diwu Qingrou's right-hand man. This handwriting is a bit strange. Takai raised his head and looked at it carefully. He said, "It's the number 1 font, but why does it feel a little strange?" "It is a bit strange." Cheng Yunhe clasped his hands behind his back and pondered. "What is strange about it?" Diwu Qingrou smiled, but there was a trace of worry in his smile. This was Diwu Qingrou's style of doing things. He knew that he had a high position. If he wanted to do everything himself, then he would be too busy. Therefore, he used all kinds of methods to train his confidants so that they could take charge of an area. Every time something happened, even if Diwu Qingrou had a conclusion, he would not say it out loud. Instead, he would discuss it. This discussion process was the process of these people's growth. The handwriting is number 1's handwriting, Pang tone. It is also number 1's tone. Plus, according to number 1's personality, this kind of choice is not enough for him to take charge. Han Buchu said, "We all know that number 1 is a very arrogant person. Whether it is intelligence or scheming, he is not below us. He will not accept his failure. I think that there is no problem with this note." And this note also shows that number 1 is still as stable as a mountain in Iron Cloud Nation, and cannot be shaken. Even if King of Hell Chu has his suspicions, he will not risk universal condemnation and make a move against a saint of Iron Cloud. Han Buchu smiled and said, "Prime Minister can be at ease." "Not necessarily. There's something wrong with this note. On the surface, the distance between the first 4 words and the last 4 words is just right. This gap also shows that number 1 seems to be thinking hard after writing the first 4 words. But it's this gap that's problematic." Chapter 128. Gao Sheng, tell me what you think." Diwu Qingrou smiled. "What Brother Cheng just said was only the layout. What I am looking at is the handwriting." Gao Sheng was still frowning as he raised his head and said, "This humble one thinks that these words are rigid and incoherent. Look over here. Many years. These 2 words were clearly written in one go. But the mood of these words is different from the words, blood and sweat. The last stroke of the word blood was slightly raised. This meant that the rest of the words were also written in one go. But on this piece of paper it was, oh, 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 oh. This shouldn't be. Moreover, the words "I only did my best" are written in one go. But it looks a bit more rigid and lacks the meaning of solemn and stirring. If it was really written by number 1, then since he wrote these words he must be prepared to die. He must be ready to draw his sword and fight to the death. We all know that when people write, their mood melts into their handwriting. And with this kind of mentality, with number 1's arrogance, he must have the meaning of, "I would rather die in glory than live in dishonor." But in this letter there is not the slightest bit of that. On the contrary, it is very plain. Gao Sheng said, "Therefore, Prime Minister, this letter is worth considering. I personally think that number 1 has already met with misfortune. Or perhaps, he has already fallen into the hands of King of Hell Chu. And this letter is clearly a trap." "Oh." Diwu Qingrou's eyes revealed a trace of a smile. "If this is a trap, then what kind of trap is it? What does King of Hell Chu want to obtain? If we are deceived by this letter, then we will naturally come to the conclusion that number 1 is safe and sound. Moreover, he is still in power." Gao Sheng glanced at Han Buchu. His eyes were filled with the meaning of "Little guy, you are stupid enough to come and discuss this." Han Buchu snorted and turned his head away. With this kind of mentality, we obviously have to continue to send people to contact number 1. That King of Hell Chu is waiting for us, and he can capture our people one after another. Although we are confident that number 1 won't reveal anything, it doesn't mean that everyone is the same. Once King of Hell Chu pries open their mouths, then the entire intelligence network of Iron Cloud will be uprooted by King of Hell Chu. This was an extremely vile consequence. This is King of Hell Chu's vicious trap. Oh? Then, in your opinion, is number 1 still alive? Gu Wuqingro seemed to be interested and joined in the discussion. Not necessarily. However, the possibility of him being alive is very high. Gao Sheng thought for a long time. He still said this sentence with uncertainty. Oh. Di Wuqingro looked at him. Number 1 has fallen into King of Hell Chu's hands. So, King of Hell Chu won't be able to get anything out of him. This is certain. Gao Sheng pondered, however. The enemy has such an important mission. Of course we cannot let him go. It would be a pity to kill him. If I were King of Hell Chu, I would lock him up. If you won't talk for 1 day, would you not talk for 2 days, 3 days? Or even a month? Gao Sheng said, therefore, I estimate that number 1 should still be alive. However, he must not be feeling good. He must be tortured to get a confession out of him. Han Buchu interrupted Gao Sheng. What you are saying is very problematic. At first, you only said that he might have fallen into the enemy's hands. That is reasonable. How can you say that he is definitely in King of Hell Chu's hands? And you are even torturing him? Aren't you being too arbitrary? Gao Sheng looked at him with disdain and revealed a mocking smile. He did not say anything. Han Buchu was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He wanted to retort, but Cheng Yun he pinched his thigh. He hissed and sucked in cold air. Di Wuqingro waved his hand at him, indicating that he should not speak. Is there a possibility that number 1 is already dead? Di Wuqingro asked. This possibility is very small. Gao Sheng paused for a moment and said, after being tortured, he would be half dead. Number 1 would definitely not say a word. This kind of person is left alive in the hope that he would be lucky enough to open his mouth. In other words, there is no reason for him to live. He is only being tortured. If King of Hell Chu is a hero, he would most likely give number 1 a quick death because he is not stupid. He knows that there is no point in keeping him alive. Gao Sheng said, but if he is not a hero, then number 1 would definitely be alive and continue to be tortured by him. Gao Sheng paused for a moment and then continued, according to the information we've collected about King of Hell Chu, his way of doing things, his temperament, and his several actions in Iron Cloud, I personally believe that this person is unscrupulous in order to achieve his goals. He's definitely not an honorable hero. Plus, he is very good at grasping a point and following the vine to get to the melon. And number 1 is a very important bargaining chip in his hand. He would only use more despicable and cruel methods to make number 1 talk. He would definitely not kill him. Di Wuqingro's face was gloomy as he slowly nodded. Gao Sheng said a lot and was already thirsty. He picked up the teacup in front of him and drank it in one gulp. If things are as Brother Gao said, then number 1 is definitely in King of Hell Chu's hands. Prime Minister, what do you think about this matter? Cheng Yun-duk asked, should we save or not? Save or not save? This question raised Gao Sheng's spirits. The 3 strategists looked at each other. They were somewhat nervous. Brother Cheng, these words, that is a bit too much. Gao Sheng said, save or not, Prime Minister has his own plans. This matter is very important. How can it be decided in such a short time? The status of the 3 strategists was similar to that of number 1. If Di Wuqingro chose to save number 1, the 3 would feel warm in their hearts. This meant that if the 3 were to encounter similar situations in the future, Di Wuqingro would also save them. If he did not save them, the 3 strategists could understand. After all, number 1 was far away in Iron Cloud and would definitely be heavily guarded. Rescuing such an important person from the prison of a nation would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. In order to save him, a lot of people would have to be mobilized. Even if number 1 was still alive, he would definitely be covered in injuries and unable to move. If he was not careful, the rescue team would be wiped out. There was a reason to save him. Not saving him was also understandable. But their moods were different. Di Wuqingro looked out of the window. His expression was indifferent. With his hands behind his back, he seemed relaxed. Gao Sheng's words were exactly what he was thinking. The 3 strategists' suggestion to save or not was also what Di Wuqingro was considering. Compared to the thoughts of the three strategists, Di Wuqingro had another layer of thought. Is this another trap set by King of Helchu? Is it possible that King of Helchu is using number 1 as bait to lure my people into the trap? One must know that to save number 1, it must be carefully planned. Moreover, the people who go must be elite soldiers. If these people were to be lost, it would be a huge loss for my forces. Do or not? For the first time, Di Wuqingro felt that something was so difficult to decide. Saving was risky. Not saving was disappointing. Di Wuqingro knew that if he decided not to save him, Gao Sheng and the other two would understand. At best, they would only feel a little disappointment. But don't underestimate this disappointment. It could make people make an incredible change at a critical moment. Moreover, if he did not save him, would number 1 be disappointed? If number 1 was disappointed, he controlled more than half of Ironcloud's news network. The three people quietly looked at Di Wuqingro. Save him. I must save him. Di Wuqingro finally made up his mind. His heart was bitter. If King of Helchu was the one who set this trap, then this long-distance confrontation is tantamount to my defeat. Because he had no choice but to follow the other party's plan. I want you to save him. You have to come. This was the first time in Di Wuqingro's life. He had always led others by the nose. Even Tai Longcheng, who was known as the continent's number 1 general, had been led by the nose by him for 10 years. Millions of soldiers were also under Di Wuqingro's control. If I want your soldiers to go, you have to go. If I want you to go 100,000 soldiers, you can't go 50,000. If I want to do something, you have to cooperate. Even if we are enemies, even if you hate me to the bone, you have to cooperate. Otherwise, you and your country will get nothing. I don't threaten you at all. You can only obediently follow my orders. Obediently follow my orders. I control the entire world with one hand and 2 countries with the other. Furthermore, they are 2 hostile countries. Others are filled with helplessness and anger. They can't wait to tear my skin off and eat my flesh, but they can only listen to me. Not listening is not acceptable. This was a pleasure. Di Wuqingro had always enjoyed this pleasure. But now it was finally his turn to let others enjoy this kind of fast spot for once. Prime Minister. The 3 people shouted at the same time. They wanted Di Wuqingro to make such a decision, but they also knew in their hearts how big the risk was. Even if I know that this is King of Helchu's trap, I still have to save him. Di Wuqingro would not change his mind once he had made up his mind. He looked at the 3 people and said, not just number 1. If you were in such a situation, I would do the same. The 3 of them shuddered. They felt extremely ashamed of their previous thoughts. Trap. The 3 people reacted at the same time. Prime Minister, are you saying that this is King of Helchu's trap? Yes, it is a trap. This King of Helchu came out of nowhere. I didn't expect him to be Di Wuqingro's lifelong enemy. Di Wuqingro's eyes revealed a happy light as he said, I also didn't expect him to put me at a disadvantage in our first fight. The 3 people turned pale with fright. Chapter 129. Look, these prison traces are clearly the traces of number 1. And King of Helchu had sent this letter with the help of our invisible falcon. Di Wuqingro said, if it was an ordinary person, they would think that number 1 is fine. But King of Helchu is facing me, Di Wuqingro. King of Helchu would not be so optimistic as to believe that I have already believed this note. You want to trick me, Di Wuqingro, with a piece of paper that has no charm? I would have died countless times already. Di Wuqingro said. So King of Helchu would not dare to think this way. But he still did it. This is undoubtedly a humiliation to us. Now the bitterness in Di Wuqingro's eyes had disappeared. They were now filled with a fighting spirit of meeting a worthy opponent. This is a letter of challenge. It is a letter of challenge from King of Helchu to me. Di Wuqingro's tone was heavy, and he predicted that I would accept it. So he already has the upper hand. However, Prime Minister, you can just ignore it and let him punch empty air. Han Buchu asked. This time, Gao Sheng did not show any contempt for Han Buchu. Instead, he showed a faint admiration. Han Buchu was a bit impulsive and did not think very far. So Gao Sheng had always looked down on him. He did not understand why Di Wuqingro would let Han Buchu attend every important meeting. In Gao Sheng's opinion, Han Buchu was not qualified to attend such high-level meetings. Plus, if he was Di Wuqingro, he would have already kicked him out. But now he finally understood. Among the three of them, Han Buchu was the most terrifying person. If Han Buchu's words were not so obvious, Gao Sheng would not have seen it. Every time Han Buchu spoke, he always had an opposing opinion. Moreover, it was a very strategic opposing opinion. It was also the opposing opinion that most people could think of. And every time Di Wuqingro explained his opposing opinion, it made some people think, so that's how it is. The Prime Minister is indeed brilliant. This was the best way to praise him. He lowered his voice. But it helped Di Wuqingro's godlike reputation. This kind of person is not stupid. Nor is he stupid. Presumably, when she was scolding him for being an idiot, he was also scolding her in his heart, right? As expected, Di Wuqingro said, "It's impossible for me to ignore this matter because it concerns my reputation and the people of Great Zhao. Under the Prime Minister's command," Di Wuqingro said meaningfully, "you must know that number one has too many resources for King of Helchu to dig out. If number one becomes suspicious of me and is disappointed, what do you think will happen?" These words made the three of them break out in a cold sweat. Han Buchu's whole body was trembling, and he almost couldn't stand. He bowed deeply and said, "Prime Minister is wise." It was this subordinate who was narrow-minded, and used the yardstick of a villain to measure the heart of a ruler. I am extremely ashamed. Today, after receiving the Prime Minister's advice, only then would he be able to imbue himself with power. Wake up from your dream. Please forgive me, Prime Minister. Brilliant. What an expert. Gao Sheng sighed with admiration in his heart. If it was before today, he would have disdained to scold him, bootlicker. But today, after listening to it, they realized that Di Wuqingro was beating them up. Han Buchu's seemingly stupid self-proclaimed mistake and flattery had completely eliminated any possible estrangement between Di Wuqingro and the people sitting here. Therefore, when King of Helchu makes a move, I can't not take it. Di Wuqingro said, "Moreover, I must save him. This way. This is in line with King of Helchu's plan. Now, King of Helchu has probably laid down an inescapable net, waiting for us to fall into it. And we must fall into it. This is King of Helchu's power and the key to his success. Moreover, if I don't save him, King of Helchu will certainly use this point to say that I, Di Wuqingro, am cold-hearted by nature. Even my own capable subordinates who have made great contributions on the battlefield would not be able to save them. If this kind of public opinion were to spread throughout the world, it would affect the hearts of the people in the future. Even the generals of the army and the officials of the royal court. If this were to create a stable environment, the impact would not be small." Di Wuqingro said casually with a scolding face and a calm nose, "Therefore we must save him. But the problem is how?" Han Buchu, the most difficult person to support, jumped out again. He assumed a contemplative posture and asked a question that everyone already knew. This person is really powerful. Gao Sheng was convinced. When he asked this question, everyone was bound to consider this point. This saved Di Wuqingro a lot of trouble. Moreover, it made everyone feel that Di Wuqingro's wisdom is as high as the sky. Even someone like Han Buchu, who was against the idea, was unknowingly convinced by him. King-level Master Yin has already entered Iron Cloud. Plus, his mission is to kill King of Helchu and rescue number one. Gao Sheng said, "Looking at the current situation, it is impossible for King-level Master Yin to save number one. But killing King of Helchu is still possible. It is not impossible. I think we should patiently wait for 2 days for news from King-level Master Yin. Whether he kills King of Helchu or not, we will make a decision at that time." Then he smiled and said, "You must know that haste makes waste. If we rush, I am afraid that not only will we not be able to save number one, but we will also suffer losses. The gains will not make up for the losses." When he said this, even Di Wuqingro looked at him thoughtfully. This was Di Wuqingro's plan, but Di Wuqingro would not say it himself. If he said it himself, it would appear that he was being ungrateful. One should know that there was still a general suffering in the enemy's prison. Therefore, he had to let the strategist say it. However, Di Wuqingro did not expect that the one to say this in advance was the young and impetuous Gao Sheng. "This is also a plan, but it is not appropriate," Di Wuqingro said. Number 1 is still suffering. Every moment he stays there is like hell. How can I bear to, Prime Minister? This is not a problem that can be solved by being impatient. We all know your feelings for number 1, but this is the safest way. The best person jumped out again. His face was full of anxiety, fearing that Wu Qingro would make an irrational decision. Very well. Let 1 command horse rider and 8 high-level dark horse riders be on standby. Once king-level Master Yin sends back a message, no matter what, immediately move out. Save number 1 in 1 fell swoop, kill King of Hell Chu, and get rid of any worries. Wu Qingro hammered the hammer. You guys come up with 2 plans. If King of Hell Chu dies, how should we act? If he does not die, how should we rescue him? The 3 agreed at the same time. Also list King of Hell Chu as a high-level dangerous person. On the list of dangerous people in Iron Cloud, he is on the same level as Tai Butian and Tai Longcheng. He is on the must-kill list of Golden Horse Riders Department. Wu Qingro said slowly, this person must not be allowed to grow. Once he matures, I am afraid that for Great Zhao, he will not be much worse than the real King of Hell. Wu Qingro's face was gentle, but his heart was ruthless. King of Hell Chu, you may have superhuman wisdom, but there are some things that do not rely on wisdom. The trap you set up might be able to trap a tiger, but I sent 2 dragons. No matter how smart you are, your foundation in Iron Cloud is still too weak. Golden Horse Riders Department's must-kill list. Han Buchu and the other 2 were shocked, revealing an extremely shocked expression. The names on the must-kill list of Golden Horse Riders Department's must-kill list were all people that Wu Qingro thought were dangerous enough. Their names would be removed after they died. As long as they were alive, they would be on the list for another day. Moreover, no matter who you were, as long as you killed a person on the must-kill list, you would be bestowed a title of nobility, or even a high official. The rewards were so generous that it made people stare. Every person in Golden Horse Riders Department looked at these names every day, and their eyes were already red from longing for them. Tai Butian and Tai Longcheng were already on the list. Who would have thought that King of Hell Chu, who had just shown his talent, would receive Wu Qingro's special honor so quickly and have his name on the list? Chu Yang naturally did not know that he had already become a popular figure in Golden Horse Riders Department. He also did not know that the price of his head had skyrocketed to the point where it was enough for a small character to have a meteoric rise, and from then on live a life of glory and splendor. If he knew, perhaps he would have made his own head to receive the reward. At this moment, he was extremely busy. After he had collected his gambling debt that day, he had made a huge fortune. Although there weren't many heavenly treasures in the Imperial Palace, there were still a few of them. Although they weren't very rare, they were still rare treasures that were hard to find in this world. After swallowing, the Tribulation Sword's heavy pellet had already formed more than half. Only 1/5 of it was transparent. And the dregs of these elixirs were naturally used by the Tribulation Sword to fill Chu Yang's meridians. Chu Yang was currently refining the elixirs. With the true efficacy of these elixirs, it would be more than enough for him to break through to the martial warrior level. A huge amount of elixirs. But the sword spirit was firmly suppressing his level, so he could only stay at the level of a first-grade martial warrior. Moreover, he could not refine the elixirs at all. They could only fill his meridians. Want to level up? Good, train. Fight. Only by comprehending all the realms that a first-grade martial warrior could comprehend will you be allowed to level up to the 2nd grade. This kind of extremely responsible performance actually made Chu Yang very depressed. If he could level up by a few grades, he would have a better chance of survival. According to Chu Yang's guess, the person who came to kill him this time was at least a first-grade revered martial artist, or even a king-level master. How can I let go without power? Even if I set a trap. But with my current strength, I can only trap a person. How can I trap a tiger? That kind of trap would only make the tiger more ferocious. Therefore, Ran Chu Yang was currently sorting out the harvest of that day. As soon as he finished sorting it out, he would immediately go out and transform into the Dark Knight Challenger. Chapter 130. That day, the rare metals in the treasury were all absorbed by Calamity Sword under Chu Yang's strong request. The remaining essences were all taken by Calamity Sword. At this moment they were all released. These were all raw materials for creating divine weapons. How could they be wasted? Rather than letting them rust in the palace, why not give them to me? Chu Yang put away the other tribulation swords, leaving only 2 pieces of star iron and red cloud steel. Naturally, Calamity Sword would not be merciful. The iron essence and steel essence had already been swallowed, leaving behind only star iron and red cloud steel. Star iron was indestructible. Moreover, if a sword was mixed with a few tails of star iron, not only would the sword itself be indestructible, but when facing an enemy, if energy was injected into the weapon, it would emit a star-like light, as if the entire weapon was glowing. This made it difficult for people to predict the direction of the weapon. Red cloud steel was simply a stroke of luck. Chu Yang did not expect that there would be such a treasure in the treasury of the Iron Cloud imperial family. It could be said that in the entire treasury of Iron Cloud, this red cloud steel was the most valuable. Everything else added together was not as valuable as this piece of red cloud steel in Chu Yang's eyes. When he first found this red piece of iron, Chu Yang almost mistook it for something else. When he confirmed it, he almost jumped in joy. Red cloud steel, as the name suggests, was completely red. Moreover, the most important characteristic was that even though it was extremely hard and dense, it did not have any weight. This was the most peculiar metal that violated the laws of heaven and earth. Even a piece of red cloud steel as big as a house would only have the weight of cotton at most. This peculiar characteristic made all the martial artists in the world crazy. Ordinary weapons had weight. The more powerful the weapon, the denser and heavier it would be. The requirements for the user would also be higher. Moreover, it consumed physical strength. The biggest advantage of red cloud steel was that it did not consume the user's physical strength. As long as you had the strength of a baby, you could wield the weapon to kill the enemy. Moreover, it was indestructible and extremely sharp. However, this red cloud steel had always only existed in legends. Chu Yang had never found any weapon that was mixed with red cloud steel. In the Imperial Palace of Iron Cloud, there was actually a piece as big as half a table. Chu Yang was pleasantly surprised. Chu Yang also understood why Iron Cloud's royal family kept such a strange metal, and did not use it. It was impossible to cut it open. Whether it was placed in a furnace or smashed with a sledgehammer, it would not be damaged in the slightest. I guess the royal family of Iron Cloud is also very depressed. They obviously know that it is a treasure, but they can't use it. This kind of red cloud steel could only be slowly melted by an emperor-level martial artist using their own true essence. Only then would they be barely able to separate a small portion of it. The reason it was called a small portion was because it was absolutely impossible for an emperor-level martial artist's true essence to melt the entire piece of red cloud steel. They would need to refine and melt it hundreds of times before they could gather enough red cloud steel for a single weapon. If one wanted to melt it completely, they would have to reach the level of a saint. However, Chu Yang didn't have such concerns at all. He was the master of Calamity Sword and Calamity Sword. Not to mention dividing, it could devour. Therefore, the hardness of this red cloud steel was almost the same as the weight of Calamity Sword. It was not much harder than cotton. Naturally, there was a lot of steel essence inside such a rare treasure. After the Calamity Sword swallowed it, only a piece the size of a human head was left. More than half of it had been swallowed. King of Hell Chu was so heartbroken that he wanted to commit suicide. However, a piece the size of a human head was enough to make a weapon, and there were still some scraps left over. Chu Yang planned to make a knife for Emo Qingwu. Emo Qingwu liked knives in red. Chu Yang was very familiar with this. Every time they met in the previous life, Emo Qingwu was always dressed in red. Emo Qingwu's favorite style, favorite color, favorite things. Chu Yang remembered them all clearly. Making a weapon that Emo Qingwu would like was as easy as blowing off dust for Chu Yang. In fact, it was extremely simple. With the help of Calamity Sword, in less than an hour, a bright red scimitar with smooth lines and shining starlight was created. In the process of making this knife, even the sword spirit was almost destroyed by Chu Yang's nagging. Here a little more. Here make an arc. Here a little sharper, a little thicker over there. That side can be smoother. Arc. What I want is an arc. In the end, the sword spirit directly stopped working. Damn it, make whatever you want. It's good enough that I cooperated with you once, and you're still not done? You actually scolded me. I've never seen so many things to make a knife. Damn it, it's more troublesome than embroidery. Chu Yang could only give in the end. He kept sighing. Only the last arc the size of a hair was left, and this knife was perfect. If the sword spirit had a body, it would probably jump out and fight with him immediately. This knife was directly made into a work of art by Chu Yang. It was indescribable. Even Chu Yang himself couldn't find any fault with this saber that he had made with his own hands. This saber was simply too beautiful. Chu Yang mixed a small amount of star iron into the knife. This made this knife, which was supposed to weigh at least 17 to 18 kilograms, weigh only 7 to 8 grams. And the star iron was arranged in the middle of the knife in the shape of the Big Dipper. When he waved it, it was as if the Big Dipper fell from the sky and danced around him. After he finished, Chu Yang wanted to use the remaining half of the material to make himself a tableware. But the sword spirit directly flew into a rage. You have the calamity sword in your hand, what other weapon do you need? Are you looking for trouble? Chu Yang was speechless. Thinking about it, he was indeed looking for trouble. With the calamity sword in hand, you actually want the calamity sword to make a weapon to compete with you? This was almost equivalent to a man saying to his wife, I want to find a mistress, can you help me? How could he do such a stupid thing? He couldn't imagine how low his IQ was when he said that to the calamity sword. Zijing carefully put away the red cloud steel. He thought to himself, I'll leave it for the heavenly armament pavilion to use in the future. Holding this knife, Chu Yang was very proud. He thought to himself that when he gave it to Emo Qinggu later, she must hug and kiss him happily. If Emo Qinggu had to return to the Emo clan, as long as she had this knife, even if she lost her 3-yin meridian, people would still think highly of her. Chu Yang's plans for Emo Qinggu's future had indeed reached the point of being meticulous. Thinking of this, Chu Yang suddenly remembered something and hurriedly called out to the sword spirit. But the sword spirit ignored him. Chu Yang humbly begged for a while before the sword spirit appeared with a nose full of disdain. What? There's something I need help with this knife. Fuck you. I say, are you done yet? This knife? The sword spirit was furious. You're more annoying than a fucking woman. There's just one more thing. I'm not free at all. The sword spirit's tone was stiff as he refused. Fuck. Say it again. King of Hell Chu was furious. He couldn't control his temper anymore. Fuck. I've given you face, haven't I? Do you believe that I won't kill myself immediately? Let you wait for another 10,000 years? King of Hell Chu flew into a rage. If you say no again, I'll die. Fuck, I'll still be a good man after 18 years, but you can only wait for another 10,000 years. And it's 10,000 years of chaos. You're ruthless. The sword spirit gritted his teeth. He really didn't dare to take the risk. If this B** starred really slit his throat, he would be in trouble. With this B** starred's temper, he might really go to extremes. Help with what? The sword spirit was unwilling. You're still unwilling? Forget it. I'll just die, I don't need you anymore. Don't you die. Life is so precious, how can you commit suicide? Call me Master Chu again. Fuck, if you want to die, then die. 10,000 years is 10,000 years. The sword spirit was furious. Oh no. Sword spirit, come look, just carve your name here. This isn't difficult, right? King of Hell Chu immediately softened. Are you kidding me? It was not easy to be reborn, and I even met Qingwu. How can I die so easily? Even if you die, you still want to live. Committing suicide is just a way for me to deal with you. Chu Yang cursed in his heart, but his face showed a flattering smile. He pointed at the saber. Oh, what do you want to carve? Here, carve the words dreaming of Qingwu, overturning the world of mortals. Chu Yang said with a greedy face, in addition, help me make an antique scabbard. Ordinary materials will do. The sword spirit reluctantly completed the task and disappeared without saying goodbye. According to Chu Yang's request, the scabbard was made to look like an antique. It was rusty, and there were a few almost transparent rust marks. No one would have thought that in such a shabby scabbard, there would be such a dreamlike peerless saber that could not possibly exist in this world. It's done. Chu Yang snorted twice. There was a reason why he made such a scabbard. Even if it was Emo Qingwu's father, he could not let him know that he had the ability to make heavenly weapons. If people knew about this heaven-defying ability, Minister Chu would probably be transferred to some big clan's prison, and become a professional blacksmith. This was picked up by a mountain one day when it collapsed. Well, didn't Beyond the Heaven Sex Mountain collapse a while ago? Chu Yang instantly thought of a reason. As for the words dreaming of Qing Wu, overturning the world of mortals, it was naturally intentional. This was just a coincidence. This meant that this saber was meant to belong to Mo Qing Wu. Mo Qing Wu's name was engraved on it, and the meaning was profound. But the saber was in Mo Qing Wu's hands, and it was a woman's saber. There were 2 words Qing Wu on it. Who in the Mo clan would have the nerve to snatch it? Humph, if you want to protect this saber, you have to protect Mo Qing Wu. If you can't protect Qing Wu, your Mo clan won't be able to keep this saber. This Chu Yang believed that the powerful Mo clan would be able to do. Chu Yang smiled sinisterly, writing through the night until 5:30 in the morning. When I logged into the webpage, my whole body suddenly became ice cold. Looking at the words today's monthly votes count 1, my whole body suddenly became exhausted. Brothers, sisters, after my continuous outburst of writing a single chapter 1 vote. This kind of situation, how can I endure it? With tears streaming down my face, I beg for another monthly vote. Chapter 131. When it was time to eat, King of Hell Chu had finished cooking. He carried the food on a large tray and hung a saber on his waist. He walked into the secret passage and asked for a kiss. Mo Qing Wu's kiss at this age was not that good, but King of Hell Chu did not care. Inside the secret chamber, Mo Qing Wu was anxiously waiting. She had to admit that it was cruel to lock up such a cute and lively little girl in a secret passage. Even though the secret chamber was well lit and brightly lit, it still did not see the light of day. As for children, which one of them did not like to be busy? Inside, Mo Qing Wu was in even more pain. Because of Mo Chong Yu's injury, he had to circulate his energy every day to heal himself. Normally, a king-level master would not get injured, but once they did, it was extremely difficult to heal. Not to mention Mo Chong Yu's internal injury, which almost cost him his life. He meditated for a while and waited for his internal energy to accumulate. Then, he would shake up his internal organs and spit out the blood clots in his body. Then, he would have to heal the injury caused by the shock. It was extremely troublesome. Only when all the blood clots were gone and all the internal organs returned to normal, and the meridians were completely unobstructed, could he be considered fully recovered. Ah, Brother Chu Yang, you are here. Mo Qing Wu's eyes lit up when she saw Chu Yang. She practically ran over and was about to jump into his arms. Ah, wait. I still have food in my hands. At this moment, Chu Yang was very angry with the food in his hands. If it weren't for these things, wouldn't he be able to hug a soft and fragrant body that he yearned for in his dreams and twirl around a few rounds? After putting down the food, Mo Qing Wu carefully came up to him. Brother Chu Yang, can you stay with me for a while? I am here by myself, so pitiful. Okay. Chu Yang repeatedly agreed. His heart was aching. Even if it is a big matter, I will put it aside for now. Look at my little Qing Wu. Is it time to eat? Mo Chong Yu walked out of the secret room from the other side of the room. Mo Chong Yu knew. Chu Yang only cares about the insignificant Mo Qing Wu. He doesn't even care about a king-level master like me. If I had come out late, I would have starved. This guy never knew how to respect his elders. At this point, Mo Chong Yu felt like he wanted to commit suicide. It was too depressing. Even in the 3 heavens, no matter which big clan he went to with his king-level cultivation, which clan wouldn't be very polite, taking care of his food and drink and even bringing something along with him when he left. But in this small place he had actually fallen to the point where he was worried about every day, and if he wasn't careful he wouldn't have any food to eat. Pass. This was simply unreasonable. Mo Chong Yu found that he had changed a lot since he started living here. At the very least he ate on time. Smelling the aroma of food, if he didn't hurry over, what awaited him would be leftovers. This was considered good treatment, but when it wasn't, he would starve. Furthermore, a mere martial artist dared to order him around. Warriors. Mo Chong Yu couldn't believe his own eyes. He was shocked by himself. When I first came here, this guy was only a martial warrior. How did he become a martial warrior in just 2 or 3 days? How did his cultivation speed become so fast? Since you are here, let's eat together. Chu Yang's tone made it seem as if he was doing Mo Changyu a great favor. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. After saying this, Mo Changyu wanted to slap himself a few times. Motherfucker. Why am I worse than a beggar? Being allowed to eat at the same table, why am I so grateful? Is this still a king-level master? Is this still me? If a king-level expert could do this, he might as well just kill himself. Do you have wine? In order to regain his dignity as a king-level master, Mo Changyu put on a serious face and asked in a dignified manner. No. Chu Yang didn't even lift his head. Come. Xiao Wu, try this, try that. How can I eat without wine? Mo Changyu glared. Eat if you don't want. Do you think I'll beg you to eat? If you don't want to eat, I'll save a portion. Chu Yang didn't care if you were a king-level master or not. He wasn't polite at all. He reached out to take Mo Changyu's rice bowl. Don't, it's fine if you don't have wine. Cough cough. I'm injured right now. I can't drink. You're still thinking of me. Great king-level expert Mo immediately surrendered. He protected the bowl of rice with his hands. He had found an excuse for himself, but the tone of his voice sounded like he was pleading, because King of Hell Chu was holding the bowl of rice with 2 fingers, and was trying to pull it out. Do you still want to drink? King of Hell Chu calmly pinched the rice bowl. If he used any more force, the rice bowl would be broken. Don't drink, don't drink. The rice is delicious. Mo Changyu pitifully hugged the rice bowl and blinked his eyes. Ancestor, don't you know how to give me some face in front of the little miss? Ha ha ha. Mo Changyu, who was drinking her soup, suddenly looked up. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. She then coughed and rubbed her stomach in pain. Chu Yang and Mo Changyu's faces were covered in vegetable soup, one after another. Brother Chu Yang is really amazing. Uncle Changyu is famous in the clan for being addicted to alcohol. Aunt Changyu has fought with him many times, but he still can't stop drinking. Mo Changyu said with admiration, but when it comes to Brother Chu Yang, Uncle Changyu doesn't drink anymore. Mo Changyu wiped away the vegetable soup on his face. He bitterly thought, people under the eaves have to lower their heads. When my old injury is healed, I will teach this guy a lesson. Yes, because your Uncle Changyu has grown up and is sensible, he doesn't drink anymore. Be good. Chu Yang gently said. Drinking is not good. When little Chi grows up, he can't drink either. He remembered that in his previous life, Mo Changyu also loved this drink. She often drank to drown her sorrows. I don't want to drink. Mo Changyu blinked her big eyes. It's bitter and spicy. What's so good about it? I like to drink heavenly pear juice. Cough cough. Chu Yang choked and coughed repeatedly. Heavenly pear juice. This kind of high-grade fruit could not be found in the lower 3 heavens, but Mo Changyu actually used it to make juice every day. My family has heavenly pear gardens. Mo Changyu's words made Chu Yang's coughing even worse. Mo Changyu laughed on the side. He felt very relieved. Finally, I saw you embarrass yourself for once. After the meal, Mo Changyu wanted to go back to cultivate and heal. Wait a bit, I still have something to do, Chu Yang said. To give this saber to Mo Changyu, he needed someone to watch over it. Mo Changyu was the perfect candidate. If no one knew and Mo Changyu was allowed to play with it, it would be gone the moment she took it out. What is it? Mo Changyu turned around. I found a gift for Xiao Wu, and I need you to be a witness. Chu Yang looked at him and slowly said, What gift? Mo Changyu wanted to say, what kind of gift needs a witness? But when he saw Chu Yang's serious face, he knew that this gift was no small matter. If it was an ordinary gift, Chu Yang would have already pushed him to the side to make the little miss happy. This gift seemed to be very important. At the very least, he needed to watch over it. Moreover, it would be best if he could report it to the clan leader. Mo Changyu was a king-level master. How could he be stupid? He understood as soon as he thought about it. He turned around and carefully sat down in his seat. This attitude was a sign of respect for Chu Yang. Brother Chu Yang, what gift? Mo Changyu tilted her head and looked at Chu Yang from left to right. Xiao Wu loves to celebrate birthdays. Every time it's my birthday, I get a lot of gifts. Chu Yang laughed and cleaned up the table. Then, he took Dreaming of a Changyu saber from his waist and solemnly placed it on the table. This saber is so ugly. Mo Changyu wrinkled her nose and looked at the broken scabbard. She did not like it. But Emo Changyu knew what it was. Seeing that the scabbard was so rusty, he knew that it was a rare antique. He could not help but ask, "What is this?" "I don't know. When I was at Beyond the Heavens sect one day the mountain collapsed and I accidentally found this," Chu Yang said seriously. "It is a peerless treasure saber." "Oh, a peerless treasure saber?" Emo Changyu was a little scared. With Chu Yang's personality, for him to say such things, could this saber be something extraordinary? Chu Yang reached out and grabbed the saber's hilt. The next moment, with a schwa sound, the saber left the scabbard. Suddenly, the entire secret room was filled with a dreamy red light. In Chu Yang's hand, the saber seemed to have a soul. It was sparkling. In this hazy dreamlike red light, there were even specks of starlight twinkling. This made the saber look like an immortal weapon. It was shrouded in clouds and mist. After the light shone for a while, the saber's body could be seen clearly. The curve was gentle and beautiful. No matter where the saber was, it was just right. Even if a master craftsman were to see it, he would not be able to find any fault with it. A woman's saber. But it was the kind of saber that every heroine in Jianghu would use. The beauty of this saber was indescribable and hard to describe. No matter who it was, when they saw this saber for the first time, they would be conquered by this saber. Emo Changyu sucked in a breath of cold air. Seeing Chu Yang so serious, he knew that this saber was not ordinary. But he did not expect it to be such a peerless treasure saber. "Wow, what a beautiful saber." Emo Changyu clapped her hands. Her eyes were full of love. When she saw this saber, she was completely attracted to it. "I will peel an apple for you." Chu Yang smiled at Emo Changyu and took out a round iron ball from his bosom. Then, he placed the red saber on top of it and slowly rotated it. "Don't damage this saber." "Ah." Emo Changyu only said one sentence, but he was completely stunned. Rings and rings of thin iron, shining with the unique light of iron, were slowly peeled off from the iron ball. It was just like peeling an apple, cutting iron like mud. Chapter 132. Not long after, Chu Yang cut out a shiny iron apple. It was very lifelike. He placed it on the table with a heavy thud. "Brother Chu, this is too precious." Emo Changyu did not dare to accept this priceless saber on behalf of Emo Changyu. Emo Changyu was still young, only a year and a half, and Chu Yang was giving her such a precious saber. As Emo Changyu's family, Emo Changyu also felt that this was too wasteful. "This saber is not limited to this." Chu Yang smiled mysteriously. He turned the saber around and handed it to Emo Changyu. Emo Changyu's hands trembled. Even though he was a master of Wang Tang, he had never seen such a heavenly weapon in his life. He took the saber with the mentality of a pilgrimage. With the saber in his hand, Emo Changyu felt as if he was in a dream. After a while, he realized that something was wrong. "This saber, why does it feel like it is weightless?" He tried to weigh it in his hand and confirmed that this saber did not weigh more than 1 jin. Emo Changyu looked at the saber in disbelief. His voice trembled as he asked, Could this be red cloud steel?" His breathing became ragged as he looked at the mysterious red ghost on the saber. Emo Changyu almost fainted. "Yes, it is not only red cloud steel but also star iron." Chu Yang said seriously, "Senior Emo, you should know why I gave Xiao Wu this saber." No, this is too much." Emo Changyu jumped up as if his hand was scalded. His lips trembled as he spoke incoherently. It was as if he had a bullet under his butt. His mouth said that it was precious, but he held the saber in his hand and did not want to give it away. "Priceless? How could this be just priceless? This is the best saber in the world since ancient times." Emo Changyu's mind was in chaos. Oh heavens, is there really such a precious saber in this world? "This is my gift to Xiao Wu." Chu Yang frowned and repeated, "Senior Emo, you should know why I gave her this saber." Emo Changyu's body trembled. He finally calmed himself down from his excitement and asked seriously, "What do you mean?" "I don't want Xiao Wu to suffer any grievances when she returns to the clan." Chu Yang looked deeply into Emo Changyu's eyes and said, "This saber can be said to be the will of the heavens, and it has Xiao Wu's name on it. I hope that this saber can accompany Xiao Wu. I do not wish to see this saber in someone else's hands one day. Don't worry. As long as I, Mo Chengyu, am still breathing, this saber will only be in the hands of the little miss. Mo Chengyu stood up and said seriously. Including your Mo clansman. Chu Yang quietly added. Mrs. name is on it? Mo Chengyu suddenly remembered this phrase. He looked at the saber hilt and saw the words carved into it, dreaming of a gentle dance, overturning the mortal world. He couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Could this really be the will of the heavens? With the hardness of star iron and red cloud steel, Mo Chengyu did not doubt that Chu Yang was the culprit. Not to mention Chu Yang, even if Mo Chengyu was at his peak, he would not be able to leave even a hair-sized mark on this saber. Give it to me, give it to me. Ng Qingwu opened her small hands and was impatient. Here you go. Chu Yang took the saber from Mo Chengyu's hands and handed it to Mo Qingwu. Ah! Don't cut your hand. Mo Chengyu anxiously shouted. This kind of saber cut was not a small matter. Unknowingly, one's wrist would fall off. How can a girl from a martial arts family cut her hand playing with a saber? Chu Yang looked at Mo Chengyu with disdain. Yes, how could Mo Chengyu not know this? Not to mention that Mo Qingwu was already 3 years old. Even if she was 3 years old, she wouldn't cut herself with this knife. However, Mo Chengyu's mind was shaken to the point where it was about to explode. How could he think of this? I actually saw red cloud steel today. Mo Chengyu rubbed his face until it turned red. He asked in confusion, am I dreaming? This saber is so fun. Haha. Mo Qingwu's clear voice was heard. So beautiful. I really like it. Do you like it? Chu Yang's voice was heard. I like it a lot. Mo Qingwu smiled tenderly and fiddled with it lovingly. Then, Chu Yang stretched out a finger, pointed at his own face and moved closer. Whack! Mo Qingwu did not hesitate. Her petal-like lips gave King of Hell Chu a sweet kiss. This? Chu Yang moved the other side of his face closer. Whack here. Whack. Here. Whack. Mo Qingwu did not reject him. Her red lips kissed Chu Yang until her saliva was all over his face. Ha ha ha. King of Hell Chu giggled like a love-struck fool. Mo Chengyu's face was full of black lines. I have never seen this kind of person before. Liking a little girl is one thing. After all, everyone likes a cute little girl, right? But this is too much. He actually gave her everything. This saber, even if it was taken to upper 3 heavens, would cause a huge battle. This King of Hell Chu just casually gave it to a little girl he had just met a few days ago who did not even know what a treasure saber was. Plus, after giving away the saber, he was only kissed a few times by the little girl. He was so satisfied that he was in the clouds. It was as if he had taken advantage of the heavens. Strange things happen every year, but only this year has more. Great King level leader Mo sighed. This kind of spoiling ghost Chung, even compared to little Mrs. Mother, it is not inferior. As he thought about it, he couldn't help but say, it is fortunate that you are not the little Miss biological father, otherwise. What Mo Chengyu wanted to say was, otherwise, she would have been spoiled by you to the point of lawlessness and become a little devil. I am her father? Chu Yang could clearly feel his forehead full of black lines. I can't stand someone who is not related to me by blood calling me uncle, but now, I am her father? What kind of nonsense are you saying? Minister Chu roared and completely flipped out. This sentence is extremely disgraceful. Mo Chengyu was the same as Chu Yang. His face was full of saliva. However, Chu Yang's was kissed by Mo Qingwu, while his was spat by King of Hell Chu. Great King level leader Mo felt extremely wronged. What is going on? I'm just speaking from my heart. Do you have to act like you want to eat me? Just as he was about to speak, he heard Minister Chu angrily say, Shut up. Mo Chengyu felt like his stomach was about to explode from anger. I am telling you. I am giving this saber to Qingwu. It is not for the Mo clan. Understand? Chu Yang angrily glared at him and shouted. Also, no one is allowed to steal it. Even if Mo Tianji wants to steal it, I will castrate him. Understand? After Xiao Wu goes back, if she is wronged in the slightest, I will wash the Mo clan with blood. Understand? About this saber, go back and tell Xiao Wu's bastard father. Just do as I say. Understand? Chu Yang's anger reached the sky as he asked a series of questions. Mo Chongyu's eyelids were almost stained with saliva. He was intimidated by Chu Yang's imposing manner and repeatedly nodded. Okay, I am leaving. Chu Yang disappeared with a whooshing sound. What a joke. That's a king-level expert. I'll take advantage of him when he's distracted. I can't wait for him to regain his senses. Even if he was seriously injured, he would not be able to beat him. After Chu Yang left for a while, Mo Chongyu was still in a daze. He finally woke up and let out a cry. His eyelids had dried up and were stuck to them by Chu Yang's saliva. From this, it could be seen that Minister Chu's saliva was very nutritious. Mo Chongyu wiped his face and was about to go crazy. He was about to rush out. Uncle Chongyu, Mo Qingwu timidly called out. Don't get up. I am scared here. Tell me a story. Mo Chongyu stopped and turned around to look at Mo Qingwu. He could not help but cry out, little ancestor, you two are playing me to death. Chu Yang was naturally waiting to be trained up there. The current him had already slipped away like a wisp of smoke, to continue his great undertaking of challenging others. So what if it is a treasure saber? Am I really going to give it to you? Humph. When Qingwu marries me in the future, this saber will still be surnamed Chu. Chu Yang happily thought to himself. These 2 days, he and little Luo have been getting along better and better. Minister Chu felt that the future was very good. He was already thinking about getting married. In the afternoon, he went back to Butian Pavilion to check. Chong'ong and Chan Yutong were already out on missions. Wu Qianqian was wearing her ferocious mask and black robe to oversee Butian Pavilion. There was nothing for him to worry about. As for the new recruits during this period of time, they were all gathered together for training. In Chu Yang's words, they were going to train until they died. Do you want to be promoted and get rich without suffering? How could it be so easy? The training ground was filled with wailing and howling every day. What was even more outrageous was that there was a third-level martial master in his 40s who was training until he cried. His tears and snot were all over his face. He was so heartbroken. It was too tiring. For such a weakling, Minister Chu ordered double the amount of training. However, there was one piece of news that made Chu Yang uncomfortable. Mo and his men did not leave. Instead, they stayed in Iron Cloud Citadel. Every day, they would leave early in the morning and return late at night. They were still searching for Mo Qingwu and Mo Chongyu's whereabouts. As for Mo Tianji and the others that Chu Yang wanted to keep a close eye on, there was no news at all other than that. Chu Yang had also greatly improved the defense of the prison cell during this period of time. Furthermore, he had continuously increased the number of manpower and facilities in all directions. He had even transferred over 10 revered martial artists and over 20 martial great masters from Tai Buqian's subordinates to guard the cell tightly. Chu Yang did not know if Diwu Qingro would be fooled or not, but he knew that if he was Diwu Qingro, he would still send people even if he knew it was a trap. Chapter 133. Sigh, this is the 4th update. After he was done here, Chu Yang continued to tirelessly challenge people, causing all the martial artists in Iron Cloud Citadel to become restless. If someone was paying attention, they would notice that the Dark Knight Challenger's opponents had increased in rank. Normally, he would challenge 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and 4th grade martial artists. It turned out that they were all challenging first pin. He really didn't know where this Dark Knight Challenger got such accurate information from. Sometimes after challenging someone who had been a 3rd grade martial artist for half a year, the next one would be someone who had been a 3rd grade martial artist for 1 or 2 years, and then the next one would be someone who had been a 3rd grade martial artist for several years. So accurate. Those who were knowledgeable all sighed in their hearts. What they did not know was that Chu Yang's Butian Pavilion had detailed information about these people. If he could not find them, that would be strange. During this time, Chu Yang was also bored. Gu Duxing said that he was going out to look for people, but he disappeared without a trace. Sometimes Chu Yang wondered, where did he go to look for people? Did he go to the upper 3 heavens? How come there is no news of him at all? Chu Yang naturally did not know that Gu Duxing, based on the principle of Ning Kei's mother is promiscuous, chose subordinates for him, and they were all elites. In front of Dangyang Mountain, sword energy soared to the heavens. Gu Duxing slowly pulled out his black dragon sword. The sword body was like autumn water, shining brightly. The sword light reflected on his face. Gu Duxing's face was like the sword body, emitting a fanatical light. Fanatical but calm. The sword body was like ice, his face was like ice. Only his eyes emitted a blood-red fanaticism. His feelings were only for his sword. He was not a match for it. I will ask again, will you come with me? Gu Duxing's gaze was fixed on the sword body. He lowered his head and asked softly. Her hair fluttered in the wind. Her soft words were filled with determination. If I don't go with you, you will kill me? Opposite him, a young man in green looked at Gu Duxing in disbelief. Duxing, this is not like you. What makes me surprised is that you actually want me to be someone else's subordinate. It's not your own power. Is this still you? You and I have been in 3 heavens for many years, yet you actually ignore it? It's because you're my friend that I'm giving you this chance. Gu Duxing coldly said, GMO, you and I are friends, but we've never opened our hearts to each other. Now I'm giving you a chance to be a true friend, a brother. If you refuse, you will become my enemy. You refused because you wanted to teach. The green-clothed youth laughed in amusement. Gu Du, you and I were equally famous in the Zhonglan battlefront. Since then, what good things have I forgotten about you? And now you're actually falling out with me because of someone you've only known for a few days? Even the reason is to drag me over to be someone's subordinate. I'm not willing. He shook his head. I really don't know why. Are you crazy? GMO, don't talk nonsense. You and I have always been equally famous. We have also fought a few times. I can't beat you, but you can't beat me either. Gu Duxing said. I know that you have always wanted to do something. Your G-clan also has no place for you. With your big brother you can't stand out. But now you have a chance to stand out. The 3 of us. Accept someone else's rule. Become someone else's subordinate. Stand out in the 3 heavens? GMO looked at Gu Duxing in amusement. Gu Du, are you dreaming? Whether I'm dreaming or not, we'll know after we fight. Gu Duxing coldly said. I've only met him for a few days, but now I'm already above you. If you can convince me, I'll go with you. GMO snorted. But if I can't be a subordinate, I can help. Whether I win or lose, I have to make this clear. You're already weak. Gu Duxing's aura suddenly rose. He looked at GMO like a knife. You're already thinking about losing. In the past, you wouldn't have thought about it. Now that you're thinking about it, it means that you don't have the confidence to beat me. Without the will to win, you'll lose. You're no longer my opponent. Why don't you just come with me? Bullshit. GMO angrily shouted. Do you really think you can beat me? Gu Duxing flicked the sword with his finger. With a buzzing sound, the black dragon's body emitted a black fog. In the dense fog, the shiny sword flashed in the fog, like a divine dragon, vivid and lifelike. Then he didn't say anything else. With the sword in front of him, his hand moved with the sword, his arm moved with the sword, his elbow moved with the arm, and his body moved with the elbow. His whole body turned into a black whirlwind and rushed out. In front of him, GMO's pupils suddenly shrank. All of Gu Duxing's movements converged into one, drawing the sword. But the strangest thing was that all of his movements were full of layers. It allowed people to clearly see the sword move, the hand move, the arm move, the shoulder move, the body move, and the leg move. Every movement seemed to be independent, but it was clearly just one sword move. Before the sword arrived, the momentum of the body was already overwhelming. Before the body arrived, the sword aura was already chilling. GMO was shocked. With a clang, he unsheathed his sword. He gritted his teeth and came forward, saying angrily, "So what if you've improved? Get." He didn't finish his words because Gu Duxing had already arrived. A gust of chilly sword energy enveloped his entire body. The ferocious attacks made GMO feel as if he couldn't breathe. It was like a small boat in the middle of a raging sea, full of danger of capsizing at any time. GMO used all his strength to resist. For a moment he didn't even have time to roar, let alone speak. GMO and Gu Duxing were equally famous in the upper 3 heavens. They were the rising stars of the 2 big clans, and neither of them had the right to inherit. Neither of them was willing to submit to the other, but they also appreciated each other. They had fought countless times and each time they were evenly matched. But now GMO felt that his hands and feet were tied when Gu Duxing made a move. And this kind of feeling had never appeared before. Do you agree? Gu Duxing asked while gritting his teeth and thrusting his sword 100 times in a flash. This feeling of completely suppressing his old rival who was originally on par with him was really too good. Even Gu Duxing, who always had a cold face, was somewhat addicted to it. GMO clenched his teeth and waved his sword crazily. Do you agree? Gu Duxing moved his sword faster and faster. Do you agree? GMO was sweating all over. He gradually felt that he couldn't withstand the opponent's attacks anymore. He wanted to speak, but he was suppressed by the sword aura. He didn't have a chance at all. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Even if you want me to agree, you should let me speak first, right? There's no time at all. Once I speak, my chi will leak. I'm afraid your sword will pierce dozens of holes in my body. How can I agree? Actually, GMO already wanted to agree now. No matter what, before he came down, Gu Duxing and he were evenly matched. This was a fact. But now, Gu Duxing had obviously risen to a new level in just a few days. Just based on this speed of improvement, if that person really made Gu Duxing improve like this, there was nothing wrong with agreeing. Who didn't want to reach the peak as soon as possible? Enjoy the wonderful feeling of looking around and not having any opponents? Only being a subordinate for a few years and being able to get such an opportunity to reach the peak, only a fool wouldn't agree. Even if it was an apprentice, he still had to work for his master. GMO didn't know what was going on. Today, Gu Duxing used some unknown method to suddenly find him. He hadn't even recovered from the surprise of meeting after a long time, and Gu Duxing had already cut the Gordian knot and stated his purpose of coming. I've joined an organization and need manpower. I want you to go. This first sentence made GMO's brain short-circuit. Do you agree to go or not? If you don't go, I'll beat you until you go. Gu Duxing wasn't a good lobbyist at all. He fell out with just 3 sentences. As the party being interrogated, GMO didn't even have time to get angry before Gu Duxing flipped out first. Then he talked with his fists. No, he talked with his sword. Gu Duxing was definitely the first person in history to be such a lobbyist. Gu Duxing was even very angry in his heart. I'm asking you to go for your own good. You don't know how to appreciate favors. Ordinary people don't even have the qualifications to be invited by me. GMO felt extremely wronged. I haven't even said anything. I don't even know what organization you've joined, what's its name, and who's the leader. Which senior? He didn't say anything clearly and actually started to suppress him with force. GMO was also a proud and arrogant person. How could he be so easily convinced? Facing Gu Duxing's overbearing attitude, GMO was furious. Even if you're the one inviting me to go to heaven, I'll still beat your arrogance down first. Moreover, Gu Duxing strongly revealed an expression of, I'm inviting you because I think highly of you, which made GMO even more unconvinced and indignant to the extreme. But now that they started fighting, GMO immediately regretted it. Fuck, the two of them aren't even on the same level. How to fight? Gu Duxing's aura now had an overwhelming advantage, and his martial power was also a level higher than GMO's. His swordsmanship had also suddenly advanced by leaps and bounds, becoming a level higher. What made GMO the most speechless was that even his body movement technique, which he had always been proud of and which had always been his biggest asset to suppress Gu Duxing, had actually lost its original effect. Gu Duxing's current body movement technique had actually completely suppressed him. This made GMO feel as if the world was spinning. Fuck, what kind of heaven-defying fortuitous encounter did Gu Duxing get? In the short span of a month, he had completely changed his face and bones. I was originally on the same level as him, and neither of us could do anything to the other. But now, in front of him, I'm just a punching bag. Calling me a punching bag would be an insult to a punching bag. Smack, smack, smack. Gu Duxing was in high spirits. With a long whistle, his sword momentum was fully unleashed. GMO, caught off guard, his body was instantly hit by the sword's spine 30 to 40 times consecutively, and he screamed in pain. Wait! Taking advantage of the time when he was being beaten, GMO somersaulted out, and shouted in midair. He had no choice but to shout because Gu Duxing had already followed him up like a shadow, and was about to be abused again. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him.